It's just amazing to see all how happy and hyper the kids are to play and get that energy out.
With their daughter and share in this pivotal moment that both of them are going to remember for a lifetime, that takes the cake every time.
I mean, not only does it support, those who may not be able to afford a suit, but also to break the stigma between the, officers and community.
Law enforcement is here to support you. We aren't just here to solve crimes. We are here to build a relationship and a partnership with our community. This is a chance to give back, so we're here for it.
I love to be generous and donate. The girls' faces when I see them in the fitting room and they're happy, to me that's the best thing.
Thank you so much for this event, the opportunity to come and shop for one of the important days in my life. Thank you for the time you put into this, and just thank you for all of it.
I think what was so significant today is the commemoration and celebration of Arab American Heritage Month, the contributions of so many city employees. So this was really significant in recognizing it.
There were 4 honorees today from the Bureau of Engineering, Street Lighting, LA Sanitation, as well as the Bureau of Contract Administration.
These are the hardworking, behind-the-scenes, talented people, and they have been a significant part in ensuring that we have a city that functions. Just a testament to their work ethics and who they are as Angelenos.
Los Angeles is a city for everyone, and Los Angeles is a city of diversity. The citizenships of the people who are living here are contributing to the well-being and to the flourishing of this beautiful city. We don't forget where did we come from, but we cherish this, our roots, and we continue our future.
I am very thankful, very honored to receive the Arab American Heritage Award. It means a lot to me because of what's going on in the world, especially in Palestine and Lebanon. I am an Arab, Palestinian American. It feels great to be honored by the city of Los Angeles. It's both humbling and powerful at the same time.
So many people carry with them heavy griefs and concern about their families in other parts in the Mideast. In fact, we realize that we share more in common. And this is an act, if you will, almost of courage to come out and say, no, we live with dignity, we came here, we're building this country, we're building this city, and we should celebrate and recognize that.
Hey LA, check out these things to do. Join LA City's Department of Recreation and Parks for its annual family festival, Salute to Recreation. Head to the Northridge Recreation Center for 3 days of fun activities on Friday, May 15th, Saturday, May 16th, and Sunday, May 17th. Activities include teen night, sports tournaments, senior dance, and Battle of the Bands. There will also be food and drinks, a marketplace, beer garden, and fun for the whole family. Find out more at recreation.parks.lacity.gov. Los Angeles Public Library is celebrating the diversity of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities in Los Angeles at AAPI Joy. This free festival for all ages will explore AAPI voices then and now. Celebrate the city's rich AAPI heritage and help forge a shared future of acceptance and inspiration with the greater Los Angeles community. The day-long event includes performances, talks, crafts, and more with an opening line dance at 11 a.m. Visit LA's Central Library for AAPI Joy on Saturday, May 16th, beginning at 11 a.m. and continuing through 4 p.m. Learn more at lapl.org. Rec and Parks, along with the National Wheelchair Basketball Association, presents a Wheelchair Basketball Skills Camp on Saturday, May 16th and Sunday, May 17th. Westwood Recreation will host youth and adult clinics made possible by the LA 28 Olympic and Paralympic Games. There will also be special guest appearances by Team USA Paralympians. Pre-registration is required as space for the camp is limited. The Play LA Wheelchair Basketball Skills Camp takes place on Saturday, May 16th and Sunday, May 17th. For more info, go to recreation.parks.lacity.gov. And that's a look at some things to do.
In many ways, Griffith Observatory is more than a landmark. It's a bridge between Earth and sky, past and future. It has appeared in countless films and television shows, embedding itself into the cultural identity of Los Angeles. But beyond its cinematic allure, it continues to fulfill its original mission, to inspire wonder. In a city defined by dreams, this hilltop institution reminds us to look up and imagine what lies beyond. Its location within Griffith Park provides the ultimate outdoor view of the Hollywood sign, complemented by immersive exhibits exploring the wonders of space and science. The Griffith Observatory is dedicated to transforming visitors into active explorers of our universe. And here, above the city lights, Griffith Observatory reminds us that no matter how vast the universe may be, it's always within reach if we simply take the time to look up. Thanks for watching. Catch these stories and more on LA City View Channel 35 or at lacity.gov/TV. And don't forget to follow at LA City on Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. Until next time, get out there and experience all the wonderful things that Los Angeles has to offer.
Good morning to everybody who's joined us today in the John Ferraro City Council chambers. This is the Rules, Elections, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee, in which we are focused on charter reform. Madam Clerk, could you get us started by calling the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Harris Dawson.
Present.
Councilmember Lee is not here. Councilmember Rahman.
Present.
I'm here. Sorry. Councilmember Soto Martinez.
Here.
Councilmember Yaroslavsky. Here. 4 members present and a quorum.
All right, we'll begin this meeting as we do all of our meetings by taking public comment. I just want to let everybody know we're going to limit public comment to 30 minutes. If you remember at the beginning of this process, we had a marathon public comment section of several hours. So today and in future meetings on this topic, we'll limit it to 20 or 30 minutes. Looks like a 2/3 full house, so we'll do 30 minutes today. And I'll ask the rules and procedures for public comment to be read into the record, and we'll begin to call names.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the procedures are very simple. When your name is called, please come up to your left and you'll go into the podium. The sergeants will show you the way. You'll have up to 2 minutes to speak on the agenda items. This is a special meeting, so there is no general public comment. So when you get to the podium, please just state your name if you wish and begin.
Calling the first few names: Nicholas Caputo, Rob Kwan, Carlos Singer, Clara Solis, and Elva Yaniz.
Thanks. And I should have said, if your name's called, it doesn't matter what order you come to speak in as long as your name was called.
Should I start?
Yes, please do.
Clara Solis with the Highland Park Neighborhood Council, but speaking on my own behalf, Historic Highland Park. As you consider what items to include on the ballot, also consider how to put them on. Consider what the people want to vote on. People have heard about expanding the City Council to 25 members. They have, to a much lesser extent, heard about ranked choice voting. I ask that you place these items separately. Additionally, the Ethics Committee items should be listed together, as should the police oversight items be together but separate on the ballot. To lump everything together would do a disservice to the people who want a choice. How you put this on the ballot will show your intent. Do you want it to pass or do you want it to fail? Additionally, you should be strategic. If California fails to elect enough Democratic congressional members in the midterms, we as a country are royally screwed. I support increasing the funding percentage for our parks, the allocation. I oppose changing Charter Section 594C in terms of allowing RAP to make the decision on selling, transferring parkland. Finally, the Charter Commission was not a panel of experts in law or public administration. They had very little time and heard from individuals and organizations who are supported by developers, corporations, and others whose hands are not necessarily clean in terms of their motives. Who do their changes benefit? Pasadena developers? Therefore, I ask you that you put aside for more study the following: empowering Director of Public Works, replacing area planning commissions with a Board of Neighborhood Appeals, streamlining city planning processes, removing ban on city business enterprises, and creating a CFO. Put those aside. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Council President. I'm just do not disturbing my phone here. I am Carlos Singer, Chief Policy Officer at the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, speaking on general public comment and item number 2 today. The Chamber, as we have communicated in multiple letters to committees and at the full council level, strongly opposes the proposals before you today. We want to be clear about 2 distinct concerns. First, on the merits, requiring workforce impact reports as a condition of every single port lease or permit will lengthen negotiations and signal to global shipping partners that LA is a harder place to do business at exactly the wrong time. And a categorical ban on public funding for automation could disqualify the port from consideration for future infrastructure programs at considerable cost to the city of LA. But even for those who disagree with us on the merits, and we respect that reasonable people can disagree, there's a separate and equally serious question here. That is, should this be in the charter at all? The charter, I implore you, is the exact wrong place for operational port policy. Locking these requirements into the city's foundational governing instrument means that any future adjustment is just ridiculously difficult to undo, as we all know here today. The port, as well as, and perhaps more than most agencies and proprietaries, needs flexibility to respond to constantly changing trade patterns, especially right now. The charter does not provide that flexibility. We urge the council to reject charter codification and pursue these goals through more adaptive administrative tools. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And while there was no general public comment, your comments hit both items, or more than one item, so you were fine. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Elva Yanez. I am board president of Save Elephant Hill. Hey, today I'm here about the increasing the park allocation on the charter amendment. Today, LA ranks 90 out of 100 in the national park score system. We invest just $92 per capita on parks, compared to an average of $283 among other large cities. We're running a 21st century park system on a formula written in 1937. We have over $2 billion in deferred maintenance. The longer we delay, that number gets bigger, and the path back gets harder. We have a model that works. In 2011, LA voters approved a ballot measure that increased the library charter allocation by over 70%. Just like our libraries, we can have a park system that serves the needs of every Angelino, as long as this committee votes to advance doubling RAP's allocation to the full council, which can then decide to put the measure on the ballot. 8 in 10 voters already say that they support additional park funding. With your leadership, we can do this. Thank you. It's great to see you all.
Rob Kwan, I'd like to start with item 7, and I do support this motion. I thought it was something that should have gotten a lot more consideration by the Charter Reform Commission. Unfortunately, they had really siloed conversations in a subcommittee of people that were really big fanboys of the Board of Public Works for their own reasons, and once the special interest came knocking around and saying, don't touch the Board of Public Works, the mayor's minions didn't want to touch Public Works. I don't think this needs to be a full-time body, and we heard a lot of conversation from the board at the time saying it's super, super important for us to be meeting 3 times a week, and we're having a conversation right now about y'all meeting less. And I don't know why the Board of Public Works, it's more important for them to meet more frequently than the City Council. I have knocked some proposals to expand the mayor's authority, but I am going to offer some things I would suggest. There's a lot of conversation about how departments are pulled in 16 ways, and I think some of that is just because of the overwhelming power council has through the budget process. That is something that should be primarily in the mayor's domain, and the veto threat of the mayor is really insignificant given council only needs an extra couple votes to override it. I think for budgetary matters, like the budget process, the council should have to meet a higher threshold if they're trying to override the mayor's budget. The Budget and Finance Committee did a good job on kicking Matt Szabo's tires on the 2-year budget proposal. Very much appreciate the extra 3 weeks thrown in there, even though that was something the commission recommended and was ignored, or one of the commissioners recommended. One thing I do want to note, this 2-year budget and its alignment with the mayoral term is something that you need to look at. There aren't really great choices here. I think the CAO made a good call, but unfortunately it does saddle an incoming mayor with somebody else's 2-year budget. The proposal is that the CAO be able to introduce changes. I think that should either be the mayor or the CAO at the mayor's direction, just because this is a very important mayoral power.
Thanks.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Before the next speaker comes, I'll call a few more names. Jeremy Payne, Justy Sexton, Nola England Talmadge, Robin Mark, and Allegra Padilla.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Nicholas Caputo. I'm the Executive Director of Livable Advanced Los Angeles, and you've received a number of my pieces of correspondence on exactly these issues. Budget, infrastructure, and procurement. Starting with budget, the Charter Reform Commission recommended switching to a 2-year budget, of which I wholly agree. However, I think that can be made stronger by making it a staggered 2-year budget, even numbered years being operational, odd numbered years being infrastructure. By doing this, not only are we escaping this cycle of everything all under one roof of a budget season, but it allows us to actually get in the weeds and the details of the actual projects that we want to get done and the actual departments we want to properly staff. This, especially when it comes to personnel, leads to a boon for the next item, which is personnel hiring procurement. I heavily support the recommendations from the LA Black Worker Center that made its way into the final report, but more than that, I encourage you and your offices to reach out to the Black Worker Center or to look at the reasons as to why those were done. These are not just things that will allow us to staff our departments better, but they have a litany of other positive effects regarding from more sustainable staffing to more sustainably funding these departments, and at the end of that day, resulting in your offices being less catch-all service hubs and more legislative bodies as they are intended. When it comes to infrastructure, this is the part where significant modifications to the CIP as recommended could be put powerfully, such as, for example, defining what exactly is infrastructure, defining what exactly is capital improvement, having any CIP be listed in order of priority in terms of projects, allowing for unfunded liabilities to be listed in that capital improvement plan, and also allowing a variety of departments to add to it while having the Board of Public Works have the final say. Again, thank you very much for everything. This is a technical day.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council members. My name is Nola England Talmadge. I'm with the Trust for Public Land. I'll keep my comments brief. I'm here to support the doubling of the allocation of funds to recreation and parks. Our park infrastructure is critical infrastructure to our city, and for a world-class city that is about to host the Olympics, the World Cup, it is actually relatively shameful that we do not have the park system that we need. As one of the previous speakers mentioned, $92 per capita is not enough money to have a thriving park system. So I ask, too, that you send this to the voters in November. Regarding the disposition of lands, I urge that the guidelines remain, that the use of lands and the selling of lands is interconnected to the funding of rec and parks so that they could properly develop them as park space. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Mark. I'm with SALT Landscape Architects. Over the course of my career, working in park design, development, and advocacy, I've had the privilege to work with the Rec and Park staff to build dozens of parks in high-need communities, actually in two of your districts. And I've seen the tremendous pressure on our park system. There is not enough park space to serve LA's residents, not enough funding to build new parks, and there's certainly not enough funding to maintain the parks that we have. Our system is facing an existential crisis. I urge this committee to move forward the proposal to double RAP's charter allocation to the full city council. The people of Los Angeles deserve a robust, healthy, and vibrant park system. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Jeremy Payne, representative of Catalyst California, member of the RLA Coalition. I'll keep this brief. I just want to flag that on behalf of the RLA Coalition, I'm here to share that this morning we submitted a letter to your offices uplifting RLA's priorities. While those aren't matters being heard today, I just want to make sure that you know that we are a resource, as we were during the Ad Hoc Committee on City Governance, to discuss how these reforms will impact our communities of color, our low-income communities, and other system-impacted communities. We hope to have an ongoing dialogue with your offices and your staff on these matters, and in terms of the reforms that we uplifted, that was expanding the City Council to 25 districts, the package of police accountability reforms, and the due process for immigrants as included in the charter proposal from the Charter Reform Commission and a charter preamble. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, members. I am Allegra Padilla. I have the honor of serving as Executive Director with Music, Arts, and Community Los Angeles, formerly known as Levitt Pavilion Los Angeles. We've been programming at MacArthur Park since 2007. I've been involved with this community off and on since then, and to this day, there are still not enough restrooms, and many of the infrastructure challenges that we face there continue. With that, we are here alongside the LA Neighborhood Land Trust to request a doubling of the RAP charter allocation and to move it forward to the full council. These vital spaces are for all Angelenos, and especially in the Westlake MacArthur Park area where we have over 100,000 people in 3 square miles. What is this opportunity in front of all of us to make sure that not only are we going to have quality of life, but we lose opportunities to host certain sponsors and to get rentals, which would create revenue for the city and help the general fund. So thank you all for your time and consideration today.
Before the next speaker comes, I'll call a few more names. Chad Shields, Diego Moreno, James Moore, Jessica Meany, Mike Jacob, and Sarah Wiltfong.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Justy Sexton. You received a very long document from us for all of our recommendations, but I'll highlight a few things here and now. The Reform Commission meetings ended up being a bit of a suggestion box for everywhere constituents, departments, and community organizations hope to see change. And while not all of the reforms should actually be charter language, they still consist of hours of public comment, presentations, and research, and they still represent the voices of LA. The whole process has been a bit messy and undefined, but I'm asking you to set a precedent this round so that work isn't wasted. The reforms on today's docket are probably going to be the height of this whole season's of Yaroslavsky's repeated and highly warranted question, should this actually be in the charter? Not is it a good idea, not do the citizens deserve it, is the charter where it belongs? And honestly, about half of them don't need to be. But I'm here to encourage you to align on a uniform practice for all of the solid reforms you'll likely move to ordinance and ensure that isn't a dismissal to inaction. Report backs, ordinance and admin code, and all of the other yes but not now decisions need to define when. Highlighting a few things that you are going to talk about today, though, contracting and procurement reforms came largely from presentations from LAWA and the Port of LA. The reasonable measures, necessary updates that were brought before the commission by subject matter experts. They deserve attention and action wherever you put them. The public bank language update is necessary for state alignment, and it's going to make us pushing for that feasibility study a lot less complicated. And just give the parks the money. I'm not going to go into an emotional description of the afternoon sunshine in the trees, although it's pretty great. You've heard the data, hopefully more than I have. We know green spaces directly affect public health. We know green spaces lower crime. We know it literally lowers temperatures. It's one of the most fiscally responsible of the budget reforms in front of you. The National Rec and Parks Association estimates it at $1 in spend to yield $4 in community value over time. And I'm pretty sure that's welcome math while you're multitasking budget season right now. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Wiltfong, and I'm here on behalf of the Supply Chain Federation. We represent ports, warehouses, transportation, retail, labor, and other key parts of the supply chain. I'm here to address the proposed charter amendments for the Port of Los Angeles. The Port of Los Angeles is not just a local asset. It's a national economic engine and a critical link in global supply chains. Millions of jobs across the country depend on its performance. The charter amendment proposals under consideration would inject uncertainty into core operational, leasing, and investment decisions. That's a serious concern for those of our members who make long-term logistics and supply chain commitments. Shipping lines and cargo owners choose gateways based on efficiency, predictability, and cost. If Los Angeles continues to be seen as a more unstable and more unpredictable, cargo will move to other ports that are aggressively expanding and taking our business and jobs with it. Embedding policy mandates in the charter makes it harder to adapt, modernize, and compete. Your own chief legislative analyst found that these proposals should not be in the charter. We respectfully urge the committee to maintain, the existing governance framework and avoid changes that could weaken the port's competitive position. Thank you.
Honored council members, my name is James, and I'm one of the charter nerds who's been following this whole process. There's a lot of things I'm passionate about that I believe would deserve public comment in this forum, like police reform. However, I actually wanted to talk a little bit about process and the options that are before you. The choices that are before you, as laid out, are not simply to pass major reforms as is with minor modifications or to banish them to the shadow realm of like report backs and endless discussion, right? There is actually a fourth option, and one that I believe this body should exercise. That option is to memorialize major processes in the charter, but specify that those details be addressed by ordinance in the admin code. This frees you of the obligation to nail down the color of the tablecloths of the 2-year budget meetings 5 years into the future in the next 3 meetings, and I believe it embodies more clearly what many of you have expressed the charter is, which is a place to address and specify what the priorities of this city are, not the admin code, which discusses how those priorities should be executed. I believe you should adopt this approach with the 2-year budget and the 5-year CIP, things that are incredibly complicated and that are also being addressed through parallel action in the BFI committee anyways. And I believe you should keep this option in mind for reforms where you agree with the substance of the reform, you agree they are important, but we can't agree on the details just yet. I think that that is an option you should keep in mind. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Chad Shields. At recent hearings, members have asked 2 operational questions. Under bifurcation, who advises the council when its institutional interests diverge from the mayor's? And under a 25-member council, how do you keep the burden on city departments from compounding? I've submitted 2 memos this week that kind of work through those questions. And on legal scopes, I agree with LA Ford on a trifurcation, a council, which is just cool, appointed by 2/3 votes scoped to advice, drafting, and interbranch representation. The city attorney remains the city's voice in ordinary litigation, and the city prosecutor, separately elected, handles misdemeanor prosecutions and stays out of civil work. The Ethics Commission or a judge panel could resolve jurisdictional disputes without dragging the city into prolonged litigation. On expansion, offices right-sized for 155 resident districts, a 4-division CLA modeled on New York or the federal government, a 3-tiered communications protocol routed through 311, departmental liaisons, CLA divisions. Outside of the expansion itself, these pieces don't need to be in the charter. They can be ordinances that are phased in during the 6 years we have to implement this stuff. And the rest of the operational details are in the memo that I submitted. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Diego Moreno, representing the Los Angeles County Business Federation, known as BizFed. We are deeply concerned that the proposed charter amendments would undermine port competitiveness, particularly in light of the fact that the Port of Los Angeles has lost more than 20% of its market share in recent years. Embedding operational mandates in the charter risks limiting Harbor Commission's ability to manage the port effectively. Just as importantly, it sends the wrong signal to global markets. In a highly competitive environment, even small increases in uncertainty can shift cargo flows to other ports. The result could be reduced investment, lost cargo, fewer jobs, not just at the port, but across the region and the nation, which will impact tax revenues in the city. We respectfully urge you to reject these amendments and preserve the port's proven governance structure. Thank you.
Before the next speaker comes, I'm calling the last 2 names, Jennifer McQuinn and Jas Vrigad.
Good afternoon, Council President, Council members, Mike Jacob, President of Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. We're pleased to represent the ocean carriers, marine terminal operators that are the tenants at the Port of Los Angeles. We're here in opposition to the proposed changes to the charter regarding the port's governance. And I think it's important for us to emphasize that we've had the same governance structure essentially in place for the port for over a century. It's provided amazing amounts of capital to the city. We've invested tens of billions of dollars into what has become the largest port gateway in the Western Hemisphere, but also the cleanest, the most technologically advanced, and the one that's poised to capture the most amount of cargo in the future once we start gaining back the competitiveness that we need. That happens under a legal structure that's underpinned by the existing charter and also under state law. You've received communications from the State Lands Commission regarding the need to maintain that structure, to really respect the grantee and trustee obligations of the city and the port. And those are actually right now very well complemented by the structure of the charter itself, which allows the city and the port to work as proprietary agencies, really to marshal that capital that we need. It's been exceptionally successful. We implore you, again, to maintain that status. We want to work together, as you heard from the LA Chamber and from Supply Chain Federation, from BizFed, to work on our competitiveness, to recapture market share, and to start reinvesting in the structures that underlie our ability to reinvest in new clean technology, newer terminals, more acreage, higher volume, more jobs. We're supporting 1 million jobs locally through the city, millions throughout the entire country. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, council members. Jessica Meany, founder and executive director of Investing in Place. I want to recognize today as a meaningful moment. For decades, LA has lacked the systems needed to consistently plan, fund, maintain, and improve our public infrastructure. Today, the city is seriously considering a multi-year capital infrastructure program and stronger leadership around public works. An exciting shift after decades of fragmented decision-making and unclear accountability. As you consider these reforms, I encourage the council to stay focused on the outcome that we are working toward: more reliable care for our sidewalks, streets, and parks and public infrastructure, the things Angelenos rely on every day. A capital infrastructure program should not be a list of projects. It should help LA better understand the scale of the infrastructure needs, make priorities and trade-offs clear, and invest more transparently over time. And I want to emphasize that strong leadership matters. A director of public works can provide the coordination, accountability, vision, and professional expertise needed to better align planning, budgets, maintenance, and delivery with the citywide view of our infrastructure needs and priorities. I also want to echo support from my parks allies to increase the funding for parks. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Tori Chair. I'm the executive director of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust. I'm here to ask you to do one thing today, and that is to move the Parks Charter funding measure to the full council so they can place it on the ballot. Parks are essential infrastructure, yet they have not been funded as they are essential infrastructure. LA ranks last among major American cities in park funding per resident. This is not acceptable for a city of our size, our diversity, and our ambition. Los Angeles has spoken. Nearly 100 organizations have signed on to a letter asking you to support doubling RAP's charter allocation. Neighborhood councils from across the city, Chatsworth, Silver Lake, Mid-City, United Neighborhood Councils, South Los Angeles, Highland Park, Venice, and more are submitting community impact statements. Residents are turning out, speaking up, and making their voices heard. Our parks are not underfunded, and our communities feel it every day. This is a generational opportunity to fix that with the public firmly behind it. Please don't let this moment pass. Move it forward. And also, we are supportive of a phased approach if that feels more sustainable. Thank you very much.
Hello, Council. My name is Josh Redivo, and I'm here on behalf of Streets for All.
The status quo of LA infrastructure is unacceptable. As you know, roads are deteriorating, streetlights are out, and traffic deaths are rising. We strongly support a citywide CIP, and we strongly support an empowered director of public works as a critical part of that plan. We need someone steering the ship, someone that can get department heads in the same room, and someone that we can hold accountable. We also support a larger budget apportionment for recs and parks. As you are considering modifications for the charter, we also strongly suggest removing Section 580 and moving it to Administrative Code. This is the section that defines the duties of the Department of Public Works. For decades, different studies and motions have suggested moving duties between departments and bureaus, with little success and no progress being made. By removing Section 80, we can allow future council members and mayors more nimble and flexible management of departments so that we're all working together for safer streets, better parks, and infrastructure that works for Angelinos. Thank you, guys.
Sounded like an ad. Any other speakers? All right, we're all set. All right, so we'll just walk through briefly. One more speaker.
It's not made for strollers. Sorry, guys. Okay. Hi, guys. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jennifer McEwen. I'm a longtime resident and small business owner in the Beverly Grove Miracle Mile area near the new D-Line extension. I'm here today in support of charter reform and creating a city that works more collaboratively, efficiently, and proactively with its communities. What may seem like small quality of life issues, functioning streetlights, sidewalk maintenance, clean streets, shaded walkways, safe crossings, and coordinated public works actually have a major impact on how safe, welcoming, and connected our neighborhoods are. In neighborhoods like Beverly Grove and Miracle Mile, more people are walking, using Metro, supporting local businesses, and spending time outdoors. I see this firsthand through my work with dogs, media, and community-based programming. Dogs naturally bring people together. Neighbors meet on walks, check in on one another, and help activate public spaces in a positive way. But for communities and small businesses to thrive, the city's systems also need to function clearly and efficiently. Residents and business owners shouldn't spend months trying to navigate overlapping departments just to resolve basic infrastructure or safety concerns. We struggled with our lights being out for almost 6 months. That's unacceptable in a city like this. But for charter reform is an opportunity for us to improve coordination, accountability, and responsiveness so neighborhoods can more easily partner with the city to create cleaner, greener, and safer, more vibrant public spaces. Los Angeles has an opportunity to become one of the most connected and community-oriented cities. And as our transit system expands, I hope we can continue building systems that support not just infrastructure, but the everyday experience of living and working in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers? All right, so we'll begin today. I'll ask the clerk to read the items that are before us this afternoon. Then I'll ask members for opening comments, should they have any. And then after that, I want to lay out the structure of the discussion that we'll have today, and what the work product of this committee should be by the time we adjourn. So, Madam Clerk.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, would you like to close public comment?
Yes, public comment is closed. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, item 1 is the continuation of the Charter Reform Commission report relative to recommendations for amendments to the city charter in accordance with ordinance number 188303. And the focus is budget, infrastructure, and procurement, and those items that were left over from the last meeting. Item number 2 is a CLA report relative to proposed charter amendments and policy changes for the Port of Los Angeles, including the Public Access Investment Plan and workforce impact disclosures for port leasing and development agreements. This item was also referred to the Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee, which approved the report recommendations as amended on April 14, 2026. Item number 3 is a motion, Rodriguez Hernandez, relative to a charter amendment to establish a small business preference in the city's procurement process, and this is also referred to the Economic Development and Jobs Committee. Item number 4 is a motion, Jurado Rodriguez et al., and the Department of Recreation and Parks report relative to charter amendment to increase the city's annual appropriation to the department from 0.0325% of assessed value of all property as assessed for city taxes for up to 0.0650% of said taxes. Item number 5 is a motion, Soto Martinez Harris Dawson, relative to a charter amendment to require a regular schedule of fee studies from all charter and ordinance departments that charge fees. Item number 6 is a motion, Rahman Blumenfield, relative to a charter amendment to grant the Department of Public Works the power and duties to construct, operate, and maintain facilities that are not a dedicated public right-of-way. And item number 7 is a motion, McOsker Blumenfield, relative to a charter amendment to remove certain language regarding the devotion of time to the duties of the Board of Public Works.
All right, today we have a number of topics before us, as you heard in the items that are on our agenda today. The basic categories that we want to look at today are mayoral powers, which is a continuation of last meeting where we ran out of time. Procurement, which there's a fairly discrete number of items. The infrastructure and the CIP, which is a big category of things. Then the infrastructure category of recreation and parks. I will just tip off members and everybody else. These two items beg the question of the Board of Public Works, or the bureaus that we have, as well as the CAO/CFO position, and how they relate to each other or not. And then lastly, the two-year budget. Or the budget is the topic. The two-year budget is the main issue there, which there seems to be widespread agreement on and seems to have been widely reviewed. So those are the items that we have today. We want to proceed with deliberation on these items, hear from experts on topics, discuss them as a committee. We'll ask Mr. Liu and Mr. Wickham from the CLA's office to hang where they are and be stationed to provide a brief overview of items after we've done discussing what needs to be studied, what needs to come back to us. And then also provide us, and feel free, CLA's office and CAO's office and City Attorney's office, to jump in if there's key pieces of information that are missing from our conversation that you think are worthy of consideration. I want to, from this desk as the chair, give you permission to go to that chair and say, I think I have something to add to this conversation, as opposed to letting us figure it out later. Lastly, I think there's a sort of 5 sets of ways we can go to them. I appreciate the public comment that kind of laid this out for us. One, we can adopt commission recommendations and ask the CLA to bring them back to this committee as something we can forward to the council. We can amend or add to those or take away from those, and again, ask that they come back to this committee before we send them to the full council. We can pursue remedies addressed in the recommendations outside of ballot box solutions. So there are things that can go in the admin code. There are things that can be done by ordinance. We want to make sure we get all of those so that we have as clear and concise a ballot, as clear and concise set of items on the ballot that are digestible for the voters, and we don't give to the voters something that we can do ourselves. We'll identify the issues that need further analysis that are not baked and are not likely to be baked enough for us to make the November deadline. And then there were ones that there just isn't agreement on or we reject that we will take the step of note and filing today. So those are kind of the 5 categories of things that are before us. Mr. Ramirez and Mr. Podemski from the Charter Reform Commission will begin by providing us information on the recommendations that are before us today, and also be on standby to answer any questions. Before we go into that process, as complicated as I think it is, I want to make sure I give members of the committee to just provide opening remarks should they have any. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Thank you, Council President. So the three topics we're talking about today are the things that I think about in the middle of the night. True, how the city manages our budget, how we deliver core infrastructure, and how we contract for goods and services. It's not interesting in there, but that's what I think about. I think they're the true tests of an effective local government. And what I do know is that other cities that surround Council District 5, I won't name names, seem to be able to deliver sidewalks and curb ramps at a fraction of the cost that we do. So to the extent that the changes we make in the charter can remove unnecessary bureaucracy that drives cost and adds frustration for everyone involved, I'm here for it. Because I think that reforms that result in faster and less expensive investments means we can make more of them, right? More curb ramps, more sidewalk repairs. And that's how we're going to achieve our goals for public safety and street safety, equity, and climate resilience. And again, I'll just say it one more time, my refrain is going to be, can it go in the admin code? That's going to continue today. I want to echo a point Councilwoman Rahman made at the end of our last meeting, which was actually getting them in the admin code and not using that as shorthand for saying it's going to go in the admin code, but what we're really doing is killing it. That's not what we're doing. Putting it in the admin code or the muni code gives us flexibility to iterate as necessary down the road and mitigate unintended consequences. And so with that, thank you, Council President.
All right, thank you so much, Council Member Rahman. So Councilmember Yaroslavsky. Councilmember Rahman has been the tip of the spear on charter reform, so I always think about her in this topic. So in our last meeting, we continued items related to mayoral policies. We want to take those up now. We also continued a few miscellaneous items, I'll call them, and we intend to take those up on the 28th of May. So we have a number of recommendations. I think there's number 16 and 21. I'll ask the leadership of the commission to come up and just walk us through those.
Sure. So these are the reforms relating to mayoral powers. So the CRC felt that there was a need for a strong mayoral executive, and that was especially so with council being expanded. One of the issues that was brought up a lot during the commission is department heads have 16 mayors, and they didn't want to exacerbate the issue, by giving them 26 mayors. So they looked at various reforms to empower the executive authority of the mayor. And we as staff did research on, the 10 largest cities in the country and the powers of those mayors. So the first reform is allow the mayor to introduce motions and propose actions of council during council meetings, and also allow the mayor to attend closed sessions and participate in discussions but not vote. So Chicago, the mayor is actually the president of the city council there. And this was sort of getting at, voters elect a mayor to implement their agenda, and allowing the mayor to introduce motions, would help them achieve that. And then attending in closed session, that's particularly relevant to legal settlements. So, the mayor currently has to sign those, but is not necessarily allowed to participate in those discussions. The second is increase mayor's time limit for temporary transfer of employees to 365 days. So, when the mayor staffs their office, they often get employees transferred for different departments to work on, various initiatives, and this would extend the time those employees can be transferred. Allow the mayor by proclamation to call a special meeting of the council. So this reform is actually part of that first reform about allowing the mayor to participate in council. Those are the same reform. But yeah, that would just allow the mayor to call a special meeting of the council. Then increase the mayor's authority to transfer funds without council approval. So increasing it from 2% in the budget to 4%. And this is, basically city contracts have increased, but that 2%, hasn't really increased with inflation. And basically this is for funds that have already been appropriated in the budget. And giving the mayor's increased ability to do this. It's basically in situations where the council's on recess or where you have sort of an emergency situation. So it's just increasing that threshold for the mayor to do that unilaterally for already appropriated funds. And then allow the mayor to transfer powers, duties, and functions of departments. So this relates to Section 514 in the charter, where there's basically 3 categories of the departments that can be transferred by the mayor or council, so have their authority transferred. And it's based on whether they're a charter department or a non-charter department. And then there's certain ones, 514B, that basically can only be transferred by voters. And the commission had lots of discussions basically about merging departments. So there was putting street lighting into DWP or putting DOT into the Department of Public Works. And they decided they didn't want to do any of those by charter, but this would basically allow the mayor to do that for departments that are not in that 514B category, so the ones that can only be done by voters. And I believe that's an overview of all the mayoral powers, and happy to answer any questions.
And just one additional note here is that even though they are separated here on your list into several different recommendations, they were made by the Charter Commission as one recommendation. It was one motion that was made into one recommendation to strengthen the authority of the mayor's office.
So you're telling us there might have been members who felt strongly about some and were agnostic about others?
When it came down to it, the entire package of authorities were approved by the commission. I believe the vote was 9 to approve, 2 not to approve, but they were all approved together.
Got it. All right, I want to ask the CLA, any representative from the CLA to come to the desk and just kind of hang there. Just give us your general thoughts on this before we start our discussion as council.
I'm not sure the justification of having 25 members on the size of the council has any dynamic in here that's relevant. That logic doesn't make sense to me. In most other cities in the state of California, the mayor is actually a member of the council, and so if that was the intent, that might have been something that could have been considered. I don't know if there was any analysis of that. That would be one way to deal with that, and instead of having an independent mayor, the idea of a charter with an independent mayor and an independent council seems to be breaking down in these issues, and so that would be something that you would all want to take into account. And then the charter currently does give the council a great deal of latitude and control over the budgetary decisions, and so this is breaking down some of those roles as well, and so I think those would be some issues that you would want to take into consideration.
All right, we'll begin with Councilmember Rahman.
Just actually wanted to ask the Charter Commission staff to respond to that, because you did start off with what I think is a very real issue, which is departmental oversight, and something that we have indeed heard from departments a lot, which is the 16 bosses question, and one that does require real grappling with by, I think, by all of us. But the question here is how do you think that allowing the mayor to call a council meeting or to introduce motions address that issue, or which of this addresses that issue?
So, one of the things we looked at was up in San Francisco, the Spur, which is an urban think tank, and they proposed, a charter reform there to, strengthen the power of the executive. And their, rationale is you elect a mayor to implement an agenda, and, voters expect them to do that. But often the way, the powers are structured, the mayor's often not able to do that. And so there were sort of more reforms as part of this mayoral power that the commission decided not to move forward with. The one, having the mayor call meetings of council and introduce motions was just around, if the mayor has a specific motion or item they'd like to bring forward, they're able to do that. And then sort of some additional context, there was another proposal for the city to have a chief operating officer. And we looked at different cities. So for example, Phoenix has an extremely powerful chief operating officer, but in most, of the nation's largest cities, so if we're looking at Chicago or New York, the mayor is that, and they have more direct authority over specific departments than in the city of LA. So that's some additional background on these.
Yeah, I would just note that San Francisco is a unique case in that they're both a city and a county, and it's a very unique organizational structure from a governmental standpoint. And so having the mayor be able to have a stronger role in that legislative process may make sense in that context. With regard to calling a session, the council meets all year long. There is not a session in the way that the Sacramento legislature has a session. And so what I think this is saying is that the council the mayor would be able to call the council into a meeting at any given point during the course of the week. And, or that the mayor would be able to designate a particular council meeting as being controlled by a specific subject determined by the mayor. I think there's some clarification or concern in that that doesn't quite fit with where the council is structured.
All right, Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Thank you. Just sort of broadly, my sense of this. So with the exception of CRC 18, which would extend the temporary transfer time for employees from 120 days to 365 days. So with the exception of that one, I have colleagues' very real concerns about the other recommendations as fundamentally challenging the separation of powers between the legislative and executive branch. I think this has already been said, but this isn't Chicago. The mayor is not the president of our council, and expanding the council, I would say, would make the mayor more powerful, not the council more powerful, right? Because you have diluted power now amongst more people, and I think it makes the mayor more powerful than the council. By adding new council members, you don't make the council more powerful. You make it's harder to get things done because you need more people to be with you. So for recommendations 16, 17, 19, 20, and 21, I have some questions. If that's okay, I don't have to go through all of them, but for 16, CRC 16, as currently drafted, the recommendation would allow the mayor to reorganize a department or commission by executive directive. So the mayor already has wide-ranging authorities to direct the city departments and commissions. I'm concerned this could be done without accounting for budgetary impacts or the instability for city staff. So I guess the question is, what problem are we solving for? And have we thought about what potential budgetary impacts there are of allowing for reorgs without it coming to, say, the Budget and Finance Committee? And if there's not an answer now, that's fine. But I think that I'm trying to raise what I'm seeing as some of the issues with some of
Right.
this.
I think just for the commissioners, I think a lot of us will have questions, and part of our questions isn't for you to opine on it. It's just to tell us if that was a part of the discussion.
Got it.
Right. So, for example, just to tag on to Councilmember Yaroslavsky's point, I think there have been people in the past, I think there are people now who are running for mayor on, I'm going to close Department X, Y, Z, and F1, right? So under what I'm reading right now, the minute they're sworn in, they can just come in and close those places. So that's been a point of controversy. Formation of departments and deletions of departments have been a big form of controversy in the city, between the mayor, council, between council members. And I wonder, was that discussed at all? I have an opinion on it, but I just want to hear more about you all's process on the question.
So, yes, I mean, as I mentioned, especially with infrastructure, there were lots of basically proposals to merge departments. And, some of those departments weren't even charter departments. So you'd sort of first have to put them in the charter, or you'd have to like write their duties under the duties of another department. And I think one of the main considerations of why the commission decided not to do it was because of that basically budget issue and just logistical issue of, merging some departments that, making a super department. But they were also aware that, a lot of them had been discussed sometimes going back decades. If we're talking about, infrastructure departments, there'd been discussions about merging some of those or rearranging those that were very old. And I think the commission felt like there were sort of political hurdles to doing what was necessary, and they wanted to, give authority for an executive, to do that.
All right. Maybe we can dispose of these items more quickly. I am extremely and deeply biased on this. If the council wants the mayor in closed session, the council president can invite them and does almost every time. Mr. City Attorney.
And if I may, in some cases, we'd have to, comply with the Brown Act. And in some cases, the mayor actually couldn't be in the closed session under the Brown Act. Right?
Under the Brown Act?
Yeah. So if somebody is not necessary, doesn't have any role in the decision, not everything that you do does the mayor have a decisional role in. Obviously, she does in settlements later, but there are other things that she doesn't.
I see.
And if she or her staff don't have important information and don't have a decisional role, it's not clear to me that they would be appropriate under the Brown Act in the closed session.
So I think that's at the discretion of the chair of the council or the chair of a committee. And then the second one was making a motion. Again, shamelessly biased here, but the mayor makes motions all the time. The mayor just gets a council member and another member to second the motion. And then obviously calling a meeting, just to add to Mr. Wickham's statement, the council has a regular agenda. And again, the functionality of that, given how often controversy flares between the mayor and the council, that's a very explosive tool. To be able to call a session at 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever time they see fit is highly problematic. So this member will be voting to note and file those recommendations. All right. Anything else on these items, members? I know there are more mayoral powers items, and we just, Mr. Wickham, we have some clerical changes that we will give to you in writing that we'd like to be prepared. There's some just wordsmithing that's in the charter now, like the use of the phrase character and purpose, and we feel like it should just say purpose. It's not clear what they meant by character at that time. And the time to transfer employees to a year. Thoughts on the thinking about that one? Number 18. It increases the time.
Yeah.
Everything already seems like it takes too long, so I'm curious about this one.
So that's just changing it from 120 days to 365 days.
Because?
If the mayor, wanted to staff for a certain initiative and needed, people from
and it took
departments
longer to find someone? Okay.
Well, they could have them for longer.
Got it. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any discussion on that one, Councilmember Roman?
Yeah, I had a question about this one, which was what happens now at the end of 120 days? The individual is forced to go back to their original department? Or can they be reappointed? I mean, this is a relatively minor change. This was the only one of these that seemed reasonable, and I was, but I'm just curious about what the actual operating procedure is right now.
Hi, good afternoon. Yolanda Chavez with the CAO. The appointment can actually be extended, so it's not really limited to 120 days.
An extension with a vote of the council, or just the mayor just extends it?
The mayor can extend.
Okay, so this is a distinction without a difference.
Right.
Got it, okay.
The other issue too on the transfer of the funding, the appropriation, that could also be done through an ordinance if you chose to do that.
Okay.
But that would require council support.
Yes. And it's, and we do it often when it comes to transfers for different items. And you could include an inflationary factor within that ordinance so that it goes up, every so often based on whatever factor we can use.
For the, just the enlightenment of the discussion, can you give us an example of the last couple times it's happened? Or would have happened?
I'd have to look, but but I think that one of the things that we do is, for example, intergovernmental or interdepartmental transfers. We use an ordinance to do that, and there's an inflationary factor that's included in the ordinance. Every couple of years it goes up.
Got it, okay.
And if I may, Mr. Council President, and that's one of the reasons that this was included and added CPI indexing here, because it wasn't in there. And I believe the last time this particular number was changed was in the 99 process.
So so the idea is to keep the process the same, but to update the
the number and to give CPI as well.
Okay, got it. And then, yeah, so we have additional language on this one as well that we'll give to you, just to present a version that I think is more sharply worded and more precisely worded, which we'll forward to you. All right, anything else on these items, the mayoral items? All right, so we'll move to our next section, which is procurement, and it is related to recommendations 40, 61, 62, 63, 64, and 65. If we can begin our discussion with an overview, and then we can sort of go one by one in numerical order, discussing those.
So the way the commission worked is, we received reforms that were from the public, so folks outside the city, but then we also worked with departments within the city on reforms that they were requesting. So all of these...
And by outside the city, you mean outside the city government, not
outside city government,
Got it,
exactly,
okay.
yeah. So from nonprofits and, community-based organizations. But we also, when the Charter Reform Commission was created, there was a list that CLA put together of all reforms requested by various departments. So these procurement reforms come from proprietary departments as well as the Department of Public Works. So, one is including best value and competitive bid, section 371A. This would allow proprietary departments to select bids based on best value instead of lowest bid during competitive bidding. Another is remove required ordinance for competitive sealed proposals and allow this procurement method to be approved by the Board of Harbor Commissioners in section 371B. This will remove the required ordinance, ensuring the need for prior council approval for requests for proposals. Include exceptions to lowest bid criteria for critical infrastructure and software in section 371E. This would allow proprietary departments to select bids based on their lowest bid for critical infrastructure and software. Allow technical or administrative defects to be cured, section 470C 12H. Approving this will allow technical or administrative defects on forms submitted by bidders to be cured without causing a 6 to 12 month delay in the process. Leases up to 66 years, section 607A. This would allow LAWA leases to be up to 66 years instead of the current 30-year cap. increase purchase order limits. This will increase the lowest blanket purchase order amounts for general managers and proprietary departments, as the amount has not been increased in 15 years.
All right. CLA's office?
We would also like to note that I think as part of discussion, there are 2 items on the council agenda that are also related to this procurement issue that was organized. So it would be item number 2 related to the Port Access Improvement Program, and then item number 3 related to the small business preference. Do committee members have questions on these items that they would like to ask the commission staff as it relates to procurement?
Yeah, can you all just say more about what best value, just articulate what best value means over in relation to what we have now? I think it means that you can take things other than the final price into account.
Yeah, and the word lowest is removed.
The word
lowest is removed.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right, Mr. Wickham, you got nothing? Okay. Any discussion on these items? Councilmember Rahman?
Yeah, I had a broader question here because to me, these interventions on procurement reform seem fairly narrow and narrowly coming out of our 2 proprietaries. I just wondered whether there was a broader discussion at the Charter Reform Commission about contracting and procurement and timelines at the city, and whether any other recommendations that were more broadly applicable also came up.
Thank you, Councilwoman, for that question. So a lot of that was kind of framed in what we'll get to when we talk about the CIP and Director of Public Works, and how that process and having those changes might help the flow of procurement from that point, and how many departments and who has to sign off and who has to make the decisions. I think that process within City Hall is also addressed here. But when it comes to these exact, to your point, these exact recommendations, they were pretty much driven by the proprietaries that wanted, that came to us and asked for these modernizations. But overall, to your point, the commission was looking at how the structure within the city was just set up from Public Works and not having a CIP into adopting a CIP, how those improvements would help the process.
Okay. I'll have a couple more questions, but I can move to other members.
Yeah, Ted Jordan, Assistant City Attorney. Mr. President, I'm taking your admonition that we could come up. Just for clarification, so Charter Section 371 is our basic contracting requirement. Contracts are awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. So we're taking out lowest, and we're adding best value. So for example, on a large construction project, we don't necessarily want to have that go to the lowest bidder. We may want to look at other factors, such as quality, performance, history of delivering large projects. We can already do that by ordinance. So Charter Section 371, the basic requirement for competitive bidding, has a number of exceptions where competitive bidding isn't required. We use those exceptions for most of our professional services contracts, because if we're going to hire an expert or a consultant, we want to look at a proposal. We want to look at their quality, skill, not just pick the cheapest. So those are the exceptions to competitive bidding. Now, construction doesn't fall within the exceptions to competitive bidding, which is why we take bids and pick the lowest. But Charter Section 371 already has an alternative where, if by ordinance, we want to authorize the use of a competitive proposal, look at factors other than price, it's already baked into Charter Section 371. So I'm not advocating for or against what the Charter Commission is recommending. I'm just pointing out that the Charter already includes a provision in 371B that allows the use of competitive proposals. Price is not the only factor for the award of contracts. We do that by ordinance. And from time to time, you'll see before the council, usually one-off for particular projects. We call them 371 ordinances. So for the 6th Street Viaduct, we did an ordinance to allow competitive proposals. For other large infrastructure projects, we do that. Now, if it's felt that we shouldn't have to do an ordinance every time we do a big project like that, the City Council also could, under the existing charter provision, adopt an ordinance that would then be codified in the administrative code that would describe whatever category of projects that we want to use this competitive sealed proposal method. So we're not doing bids. And there is a codified section already in the administrative code, in section 10.15. We don't really use it because it's a very narrow range of products. So the bottom line is, the basic requirement, and this is how we buy pencils also, or products, it's through low bid. We have a process in the charter that allows the City Council to adopt an ordinance if we want to not only look at price. So a lot of what is accomplished in the charter proposal, we can already do through a code change.
So that's a put it in the admin code?
You could adopt an ordinance, put it into the admin code, which is why I'm sitting here right now.
Could we put
And
all
so,
of it in?
but again, I'm not putting my
No,
thumb
I
on the scale
understand.
in the charter.
I understand. So Councilmember Yaroslavsky has questions. Hang there. I'm going to ask Mr. Reamer to make his way up since he buys most of what the city has, or a lot of what the city has. I'll have a question for him, Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yeah, so to drill down into that, could procurement generally, contracting generally, just go in the admin code? Is there any requirement that we put in our city's constitution specific terms around contracting? I mean, I think contracting is one of the places we are abjectly failing, and I don't think we can imagine all of the ways in which we may need to tweak whatever ends up in the final version of this down the road. And I would love for it to just be something that goes in the admin code. I'm wondering if that's allowed, if other cities around the country or the state have it in the admin code instead of in the charter.
Well, we do already in the administrative code have a number of contracting provisions.
Right.
The provisions in Charter Section 371, the basic requirement for competitive bidding, the exceptions to competitive bidding, this alternative process, competitive sealed proposal, that's already mirrored in the administrative code. We could adopt further provisions consistent with the charter and put them into the administrative code. So
But it would have to be consistent with the charter. My
Yes.
question is, why do we have all this detailed stuff around procurement in our city's constitution? Why not just have, to the point that was made earlier, something saying you shall come up with a robust contracting program that maximizes benefit for Angelinos while protecting core values of the city of LA? Go do that in the admin code.
So I can't speak to why these provisions were in the original.
But you
in the
could
charter.
do that.
Yes, yes. Now, the proposed language from the Charter Reform Commission says that the city shall, so that's required, contracts shall be let to the responsive bidder furnishing satisfactory security for performance, and then they added best value in there. That means the city must award contracts to best value. So that means if the city wants to buy some simple goods, paper, office supplies, because the charter language says that the city shall do it based on best value, it may be harder to simply base it only on price.
So are we then doing an analysis every time on what best value is every time we want to buy pencils?
I'm just trying to do the best I can in terms of interpreting the proposed charter language.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
It depends on how
Thank
best
you.
value is defined.
So, Mr. Reamer, do we do this every time we get ready to buy pencils?
John Reamer, Inspector of Public Works, Director of Bureau of Contract Administration. No, we don't, because as City Attorney Ted Jordan was saying, we have the lowest responsible bidder piece. Again, as Ted said, I'm not here to advocate for or against, but I will say this to the city family. We have a structure in place to protect us, fiscally to protect us. And when you take out the word lowest, you eliminate that. Because you will not have, unless you put guidelines in governing what, as the councilman was saying, connotates best value, that would be a subjective interpretation by whomever it might be. you already have the provisions to utilize alternative procurement methods, such as best value. One that could also be utilized to a greater extent would be a type of pre-qualification. If the concern is speed, if the concern is time, then that can accomplish both.
So I think speed and time are big considerations. I also think that math is sometimes presented as, amounts are presented as arbitrary because everybody uses the same count. $5 means the same thing to everybody, if I'm looking at the $5 in isolation. But a $6 price, and you're operating inside the city and you're going to pay taxes back to the city, is actually cheaper than $5. And that's where I wonder, do we have a mechanism that allows that to be taken into account? As you know, because you and I have been working on this for more years than either of us cares to admit, whether or not people hire people from the city makes a difference in the overall bottom line, even though it might not show up in the actual price. And what I want to make sure is that we don't bypass these recommendations without giving ourselves the best opportunities to take advantage of those opportunities on the one hand, but protect us on the other hand, because I agree with you that the city does need that protection, because I can imagine years from now, no one on this council or in this city family saying, well, my friends run that business, so that's the best value. And you want to protect the taxpayers from that, but there are very real things that aren't money that are valuable to the city.
So I'm sorry to keep pressing on this, because I know that the Charter Reform Commission had very detailed discussions on this, and although I kept myself updated, I'm not sure exactly what you grappled with in full in every meeting. So I just want to describe a situation that we had at one of our with one of the facilities that we had in our district, a bike path that we had to bid out for. And then we had bid out for someone to do the engineering services, to draw the plans for it. Someone then won the bid. Then there was a delay between two departments in whatever the next step was, and then that bid expired. And then they had to go out and get another RFQ for an engineering services bench. That bench was then approved by the RAP board. And then they had another task order solicitation go out, and then got another bid from the same people that we had bid with before, but it was more money this time because so much time had passed, and that was, between those two instances, it was over a year. And then the construction services then had to be rebid because of the length of time that had elapsed. And then the project was more expensive, and so then they waited longer because they had to go back and find more funding because the costs had gone up so much. And all of this was tied to requirements for contracting that had to go out and get rebid over and over again. So I guess I'm so then something that was supposed to happen in 2023 happened in 2026, finally, for significantly more cost by the same people who had originally bid on the project. And I'm just wondering, I know that was not the most detailed description, I'm happy to share the details with you, but how much of that process is determined by requirements in the charter that need to be changed in order for us to be able to make a more sensible process of all of this? Like, that doesn't seem like the best outcome for the city. I'm sorry, I apologize for this being a very vague question, but
It's not vague.
it's like I feel like I'm up against this all the time, and I'm trying to understand and unthread from this what of this is in the charter that we need to remove in order to make sure that we're able to get faster and cheaper outcomes for the city as a whole. Because a process intended to save our dollars ended up actually costing us more with the same people.
Can you, and I, just to jump in, because I think Councilmember Rahman's describing something that if you've been here more than 5 years, this is one version or another of this has happened to you in a council district. Yeah, but and I think there's familiarity with it. I mean, this is frankly, I like the council member, I would like to hear the deliberations of the commission, but nobody on the commission's had to do a project in a district, as far as I know. So, Mr. Reamer, you have. Mr. Jordan, I know you've been involved. I know you've unplugged some of you've unblocked some of these things in Council District 8 projects, that the kinds of things that Councilmember Rahman is describing. But I guess I want to agree with Councilmember Rahman. If we're going to deal with procurement, let's deal with the actual things that cause problems.
This is the problem.
Yeah.
This is the problem that we're dealing with.
Yeah. And so before you go, Mr. Reamer, Mr. Soto Martinez.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I actually want to take it back to what you were saying, your last comments regarding sort of value and having factors that are about the city, job creation, things like that. I know this has come up a little bit on LA 28, and so I just, from my understanding, what is there? I know there's a formula out there, and I don't know how we use it or for what, but that it recognizes that it may cost the city more money, but it's putting value on small businesses and things in the city. I know I've heard this and I've read about this. So could someone enlighten me on where we use it? But I think there's a cap. I don't think that it allows for all of our city dollars to be used for this. But can someone explain this to me?
Happy to do it.
Thank you so much.
Danya Minasian, Assistant City Attorney. We do have a local business preference program. It has certain percentages that gives an added value to a bid or an RFP if you're a local business. First, it provides a percentage if you're located in the county, and then it gives you an additional preference if you're located in the city. We added that most recently in a charter amendment. And then if you also are a small business or a transitional employer, you get additional preferences. And you also can get preferences if you use subcontractors that are either small or transitional employers. So there is a mechanism that adds value as a matter of social policy for these local, small, and local transitional businesses. That brings down the bid and allows the city to pay a little bit added value for those services.
Okay. And where was that, when was that created?
It has been in existence, but it was amended wholly recently, I think in the last 2 years. And the charter reform was Measure BB, and I think that was 2 years ago, and we added the city preference to provide for extra preference if you're located within the city boundaries.
Okay, so we have that in the charter already.
It's not in the charter, it's actually, the charter does provide for the local business preference, and then the specifics are all done by ordinance, and it's LA Administrative Code 1025. And that's the overhaul that was done, incorporating all of the bid preferences together into one ordinance.
Okay, and that captures everything that we bid for?
That's supposed to apply in all contracts.
It is.
It does.
Mm-hmm. And how do we feel that's working for us right now?
I'll let you answer that.
Well, I mean, you'll let me answer it. I mean, it works as it's designed to work. In other words, as was stated, all numbers are not the same. So the intent is to take into consideration some additional areas that, let's say, local businesses have by providing a preference. And so we're not, even though we have the language lowest, responsible bidder, having that preference enables us to still preserve and respect that, but also give deference to a local city business. Mm-hmm. And it does come into play. It does benefit those who provide as best they can a competitive bid. Again, I didn't want to overlay me on this, but my concern would be with respect to best value. If the concern is making sure that small businesses have an opportunity, they're going to be limited with respect to the value they can bring in comparison to a much larger business. So if you have no guidelines or constraints on your definition of best value, you lose that objective view. Pre-qualification, dare I lay me on this, changes that, because now you can establish what it is you want to see from your community, your bidding community, your proposing community as it relates to this. And then once you establish that pool, now, as the council member mentioned, a task order solicitation is issued, it makes it a little easier because the bench is already established. We've already gone through the administrative hurdles. I don't see how removing this word lowest is going to fix what I'm hearing from each of you. That's what you're hearing me say.
Right.
And that won't solve our problem.
So look through to code 1025, and what are the current preferences that we are giving right now? Like, just
Like
give me
the
more
percentage amounts?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to speak in generalities just because it's easier, because there's a distinction between contracts under 150,000 and contracts above 150,000, but general principles are the same. You get a 6% local business preference if you are in the county of Los Angeles.
Okay.
You get an additional 4% if you're located in the city boundaries. Then you can get an additional 2% if you're also a small business or a transitional business. I think it's up to 14, and then it's capped, so up to 14%.
So we're assuming we'll pay 14% more.
Yes, with a limit of $1 million as the highest bid preference you can get, depending on the value of the contract.
And the reason we capped it at million?
It's
we're
really
assuming
to
it'll be
be,
cost prohibitive at that point. It's just not
to stick to the principles of the lowest responsive bidder with these preferences in mind.
What has there been any? So I think using our city dollars to support businesses within the city, residents within the or companies that have residents live in the city, or even as a tool for economic development, I think is we have to explore all of that. Most recently, the idea that we had within our office is that there's a lot of industries that are just having a hard time, like the garment worker center. The garment worker industry is, tens of thousands of workers, since international, a lot of the things have moved overseas, but there's still like a lot of people that are doing that. But yet we buy uniforms all the time for employees, things like that. So is that something we could look at and explore in giving a preference through the admin code? Is preference for like things that could stimulate or create jobs?
Well, yeah, we can, through ordinance, we can try to talk about those various industries or things like that, but I don't necessarily think it's a charter reform issue.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. It's like, how do we do that? Is it through the charter or is it through admin code? But it doesn't sound like there's limitations to what we could do through the admin code. We can be pretty creative. Yeah, what are the limitations?
The limitations is that it has to be tied to a local preference. And then once you kind of tack on to the local, we have to have rational basis for why we're doing it and things like that. But we can work all of that out.
And nothing in the charter currently prohibits us from doing that, trying to find a rational basis and make changes?
Charter prohibits bid preferences unless they're based on a local geographical preference first, which is defined as the state, the county, or the city, specifics to be defined by ordinance. The specifics that are defined by ordinance do not include the state. I'm just saying it's allowed under the charter, but we limit it to county and city.
So if we were to change it to city, we would have to go to the charter and change that?
No.
No, we wouldn't? No. Okay.
So, Mr. Reamer, I heard you say loud and clear, nothing we're discussing will fix the problems that we're bringing up. So I guess the question would be, kind of building on what Mr. Soto Martinez just asked, is the remedy do you believe the remedy to our problem is in the charter, or is it in our admin code and ordinances and just our general practice? Because I still have this issue about sometimes practices change without the charter, the admin code, or the council, or the mayor. A department just decides, this is how we're doing it. And that is true about contracting in particular. But Mr. Reamer, that question?
Yes, because life is so flexible and fluid, humbly speaking, the charter is fine. It serves its purpose to protect all of the residents of Los Angeles from economic issues and concerns. The latter will give us the flexibility that we need with respect to the admin code and ordinances for any given governing body at the particular time for that particular issue with the issues that we face. And so right now, this governing body does have that mechanism in place for them, the admin code and ordinances, to address the concerns we see today.
Got it. Thank you. And I just got word that there are proprietaries. I see DWP and I see airport at least. Do I see port? No,
we do have all the proprietaries, I believe, represented here, Council President. And I just wanted to bring it back to that this was a specific request and presentation that the proprietaries came to the commission and asked for this and said specifically it will help them in their work specifically, and that to differentiate from what Council Member Rahman said about her local project. The proprietaries deal less with that in their work when they're dealing with on port property or airport property and everything. So if any of them would like to speak, they did present almost uniformly together some of these, but again, this was their specific request. Fantastic.
Mr.
We have someone from Lawa coming.
There we go.
Sorry, could I just ask
Yes,
a question
please.
here before people leave? So I wanted to clarify, I think, Mr. Reamer, you may have answered the question I asked, but I'm not sure that I understood it, which is what are the changes that would be needed and where are they located in order to address some of the issues that I described in that contracting process?
Just hearing without knowing all the details of your process,
Yeah.
what you described, it won't be a charter change. It will not. What I heard sounds very, very, very familiar.
Right.
As of yesterday, 41 years with the city.
Yes.
So.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Charter change won't fix that.
So
It can be fixed, should be fixed.
So I guess, Council President, in kind of underscoring what you said before, which is that this process doesn't end at just the charter, that we're actually going to take it up in the admin code. How do we get analysis here that allows us to understand what changes need to be made in the admin code to ensure that our contracting isn't so laborious that we end up paying more to the same companies just 6 months later to do the exact same thing?
One of the, I'll make one of our instructions that we ask the CLA to work with the Director of Bureau of Contract Administration to lay out some next steps for us to address the problems laid out by Councilmember Rahman, but experienced by almost every member of the council. If you feel like that's something that you can be helpful with.
Oh, absolutely. Welcome
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and I have no idea what the proprietary is going to say, but I will say this before they speak. Their world is different. Yes. Their world is different.
Okay.
From the port to the airport to DWP, their world is different. So whatever's proposed, take that in consideration. The proprietaries, their world is a little different.
All right. Whoever wants to jump in first.
Yeah, we've got several here from all the proprietaries. Go ahead. Yeah, it's on.
Oh, it's on. I was just at a hearing where you had to push the button. Good afternoon, everyone. Fernando Valero, Executive Director of Strategic Issues at DWP. We've thought long and hard about charter and administrative code changes. We endeavored to benchmark a lot of the changes that we proposed against other public utilities. And what we found was that DWP was behind in a lot of areas. And so we think Our proposals were very measured and reasonable when you think about that. In terms of some of the issues that were brought up around 371A and lowest bid, I think we just want the flexibility to be able to procure a Toyota instead of a Pinto, right? In some of these competitive solicitations that are very standardized. And I heard the gentleman from Public Works talk about, there are some exceptions. My understanding, those exceptions exist when you go to competitive sealed proposals and you're looking to do an RFP and you have to get an ordinance. And those ordinances typically take 9 to 12 months, right? And so when you're talking about trying to transform your infrastructure, meet 100% carbon-free goals, get local water, you have 12,000 employees, those sorts of restrictions are pretty challenging when you're trying to do timely procurement. So that's why we tried to be thoughtful about providing some reasonable flexibility to allow us to procure in a prudent quality manner.
Hi, good afternoon. Marla Blevins, Assistant General Manager with LAWA for Finance and Administration. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. There are a number of charter reform aspects relating to procurement that were recommended by the Charter Reform Commission that we're in support of. And like my colleague from DWP, we find that a lot of the requirements that are in place right now are burdensome and don't allow us to optimize the spend that we have at LAWA. It's no secret, we've got a huge capital program that we're in the middle of, a $30 billion program that is, and a lot of it has to do with getting ready for the Olympics. And to the extent that we can have the flexibility, just even looking beyond the Olympics, obviously, as well, to be able to procure things on a best value basis, and also not having to get an ordinance every time we do an alternative delivery method for a construction project. We've gone beyond design, bid, build. We do construction manager at risk. We've done public-private partnerships. We've done progressive design bid. And to the extent that we have to go to council to get an ordinance every time we do something different, it adds months onto the process. Also, we would like to have added in the charter the ability to allow for technical or administrative defects to be cured. We have high-quality bidders that maybe they didn't sign a form or they didn't put the paper clip in the right place. I'm exaggerating to a point, and we have to throw out their bids, and they're no longer allowed to bid.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's section 470C that we're looking to have changed. And then also we're looking to have leases be allowed for up to 66 years. The port has had that for quite some time now, and we'd like to have that ability as well. So in short, there are 5 proposals that the Charter Committee recommended, and we're in support of all of those in order to be able to deliver projects and services to our stakeholders more efficiently and more effectively.
Thank you for that. I will note that LAWA has a very aggressive, and I've definitely been eyeballing aggressive local and women and minority-owned small business participation program. I think one of the most aggressives anywhere in the city family. I'm assuming that what you all are here today to support helps achieve that more efficiently.
In short, yes. Yes.
Okay.
LAWA does have a very robust, we just call it XBE program because X covers a lot of ground, local business, local small business, et cetera. And we don't have goals, we have requirements. And so obviously with Prop 209, there are certain things that we can't do anymore, but they do achieve multiple policy and outreach goals with the program that we do have in place. And these charter changes will help us to carry out those
Got it.
those programs.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify one point, and here as Assistant
Can you
General.
say your name and?
Yes, of course. Adina Hopenstand, Assistant City Attorney. I'm the Assistant General Counsel to LAWA, and I wanted to just, one, let the committee know that I'm here to the extent you have any legal questions, but also maybe make a finer point on 371A, because you had quite a bit of discussion, including with the Director of Contract Administration, and just not commenting on the policy at all. You're here with the experts to speak to the policy reasons and goals that they have, but just if it would be more palatable in order to move this forward, to make 371A clearer to apply to the proprietary departments. That apparently was the intent, as the Charter Commission representatives indicated. It may not be effectuated in the language before you. So just wanted to offer that as a potential compromise for your consideration. But here to speak to the policy are the people from the proprietary departments.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Hi, good afternoon. Stephanie Magnan-Rockwell from the Port of Los Angeles, Chief of Staff. I want to echo some of the comments from my colleagues at the DWP and LAWA. I think there are many instances where low bid is appropriate for some standardized procurement items. When we're talking about specialized equipment or services, a best value is often a better choice. You're able to consider a wide variety of options that the low bid may not capture. We also have the local business preference, and we have a PLA which sets standards for local hire and apprenticeship programs. So like my colleagues at the proprietary departments, we make big efforts to service the residents of the city of Los Angeles, but there are instances for specialized equipment, thinking like dive boats or software, which may be really specific to our operations. A low bid is not always the most effective way to get those services.
Got it. All right, and that's all our proprietaries, right? I lose track. Yes, all right. And so if the Charter Commission, can you speak to, essentially what we're hearing is what's in front of us was really intended for the proprietaries and not for the rest of the city family? Does that make sense to you?
That was the primary discussion was
it.
around the proprietaries. I think the Department of Public Works was probably aware of it, but I don't necessarily recall them engaging in discussions on this or giving comment on this. This was primarily driven by the folks you see here at this table to help them do their job better for the city.
All right, so thank you for that, and thank all of you for being here. It turned out to be very critical, so we appreciate you making the drive or the walk down the hill. Yes, of course, Mr. Habib.
Hi, Paul B. with LADWP. Just because this discussion has been talking about charter versus administrative fixes, in the letter we submitted to the CLA, we have both in there because there's some stuff that can be done through, council action and some that would require the charter.
Oh, so you've already separated for us.
Yes, and we try to make it as simple as possible. We've been talking together as proprietors for a while about the joint issues we have as we try to be an economic engine for the city and ways that might be helpful. So as you do your deliberations, hopefully that helps. That's
very helpful. Thank you all so much. If there's no other discussion on here, it seems like what makes sense, Mr. Wickham, you can give us an overview of what we've heard, but it seems like the recommendations from the commissions make sense to apply to the proprietaries, and then we'll have a report back on ordinance and admin code changes we can make to deal with the procurement issues that we have inside the regular city family. Just to sum it up.
Okay, so
Yes, sorry.
Just a couple quick notes, because there's a lot of conversation there. I think as was noted, the conversation on procurement was focused on the proprietaries. So
Yes.
the Board of Public Works and the bureaus were not primary in that conversation. GSD was not primary in that conversation. Office of Procurement was not primary in that conversation. So there's a large conversation about procurement that's involved in this area. And so, but noted your concepts of this is applying to the proprietaries, and we'll deal with the other departments through the ordinance process. And we have a BCA's CLA report, and we would actually probably include the CAO and GSD in that conversation as well.
Perfect. And city attorney.
And city attorney, yes. There should be some component of contracting included in the charter no matter what. And so we just want to be very careful and cautious that we don't go too far and create other risks or concerns with state or federal law or other concerns that put us at a disadvantage. So we want to be careful about that. And then also the CLA had done some reporting on the local business preference program back in 2016 for the council's ad hoc job creation committee. So it's been 10 years since there's been some analysis of local business preference. So at some point, maybe the council would want to take a further deeper look into that program.
That's a great matter to put in front of our Economic Development and Jobs Committee. All right. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
I have a question about the public bank
Yes.
idea. Now's the time. So I've heard a lot of things about what a public bank can be. And, I guess one of the things that people talk about that it's going to be great for, which it sounds like it would be, is sort of consumer accounts for Angelenos. My understanding is that that's not what this is, that a public bank that we create is really for our own internal purposes. Can we either speak to that today or get some more information back on what it is when we say public bank? What does it mean we're creating? Are we creating a credit union for Angelenos, or are we creating a thing for us to borrow and move around money without having to go to the private sector to borrow? Or is it neither of those things?
We could certainly provide a report back to the committee if you would like. We have over 100 pages worth of CLA reports on the subject matter, addressing exactly the questions that you've raised, and we could consolidate some of that information. We would need the council to tell us exactly what type of bank you would want to pursue. It may be that the advocates have identified proposals, but there are at least 3 or 4 different models for public banks, and the council has not decided which model it would want to pursue. So we would want to look at that. We know that with regard to city banking, that there are strict state laws that are in place that protect because remember the bankruptcy in Orange County, 20, 30 years ago, as a result of that, the state enacted significant set of requirements on local governments. So for example, any bank that we do business with is obligated to have particular, I can't keep all the words in my mind at the moment. I didn't expect to go into much detail on this. They have to have protection. They have to have capital in hand in order to, right? So we would never be able to go to create a municipal bank that has that level of capital to start with to protect our general fund to do our banking practices and services. So there's some significant hurdles that need to be addressed. We're still waiting to get the full funding for a study on what it would take to form a municipal bank in the city of Los Angeles. And once we have that funding and are able to do that study, we would be able to come back to you with more details. The municipal bank is not required to be in this charter. That was something that would be, you can do through a different process. You don't need to amend the charter to require or obligate the city or even allow the city to do a public bank. We could do that through different methods.
Okay. I'll just say, Councilmember, that it was the commission's understanding, and what this motion is to just allow the city if at one day they want to create a public bank, this would remove a hurdle that we were explained, and we worked again with stakeholders and to align with California state law. So this does not create a public bank. This would just give the city, just remove a potential hurdle in the charter if the city wanted to create a public bank.
Yeah, about just a little bit of history, which you will know more about, Mr. Wickham, because I was very new, but I sat on the committee to form a public bank, and one of the topics, Councilmember Yashlovsky, was if we set one up because the charter doesn't speak to it, that the regular banks would automatically sue us.
Yeah.
And so having it here that we're allowed to do it stops that path, but there's also the state law problems that we have. And also, in that committee, we never even decided what was the main goal of it. So we have, a lot of the city that is unbanked, like my district, there aren't banks. So, there was an idea that you could go to a library and cash your check, and we could deal with the, we have these check cashing places that basically gouge our residents because they can't get to a bank. So that was one aspect of it. Another one was, and I remember this vividly, when we passed Measure HHH at $1.4 billion, and someone from finance came and said, we're going to spend $90 million on banking fees, which was enough to literally build another development. Like at that time, I mean, it may not be that, it may be a little less than that now. So there was banking fees, and then there was lending, right? So we have places where they're lending blackouts or redlining or apartheid, whichever, pick a word. It's what the banking industry does and the insurance industry does. So those, we never decided which one of those was the one we were going to focus on, but those were the sort of topics that we wanted to get at.
I would point that CRC 11 regarding business enterprises was actually the factor that would that required voters to approve allowing us to do a municipal bank. So if that CRC 11 is enacted and approved, then that would remove the barrier to doing business practice.
Which could extend to something like creating an economic development corporation and monetizing our real estate portfolio.
A variety
all
of
sorts of
things.
other things we might want to do beyond just a public bank.
Yeah, including the municipal bank.
All right, thank you for this. So you got us through the main meat of this part, which is the recommendations are intended for the proprietaries. We'll have a report back from you, the city attorney, Bureau of Contract Administration, and CLA and CAO on fixes to the problems that Councilmember Rahman articulated, but that we all face. Any other big items on in the area of procurement, council members or staff?
Mr. Chair, as part of this procurement discussion, we also mentioned that item number 2, as it relates to the Port Access Improvement Program, is part of this discussion. Would you like to discuss that at this time?
Any discussion on the Port Access Program? Other than to say, I would like something to, I think the concept is general, this is just this member's opinion. The concept is fine. I'm concerned about any details or amounts of money or, timelines and things like that going into any recommendation. But I think the general concept, I'm certainly supportive of. And like other topics, we have some red line that we will share with you and committee members as well from my
Thank you.
office. Yes.
Hi, Stephanie Magnan-Rockwell, Chief of Staff, Port of Los Angeles. Couple of comments that I'll say about our PIAP. This program has been in place, set by the Harbor Commission since 2015. It was further codified by our board in 2023 to be put into the Port CIP. We don't need a charter amendment to have a PIAP. It already exists.
One more for the admin code. Thank you.
Well, I would argue we don't need it in the admin code
Oh,
either.
not even that. Okay, all right.
Because the Harbor Commission has been effectively implementing this program for over 10 years.
Okay, thank you. Important clarification. You so noted. Anything else on this, in this area of procurement that we either overlooked or is a hanging chad? No? All right. We can move to infrastructure, which I expected to be the meatiest part of this meeting, but we only have about 40 minutes left because we will end on time no matter what. So I'll ask, I see Board of Public Works is here. CLA, CAO, City Attorney, I see we have a Public Works Commissioner. I'll ask her to come forward as well. Commissioner Chavez, because the board submitted a letter on this. The mayor just released, I guess within the last, I don't know, 3-4 weeks,
Last week, I think, maybe.
Was it
2
really?
weeks ago? Sorry, I didn't.
No, it's had to be more time than that. My brain's not that out of whack. Was it last week? Jesus. Well, life is lifing. So we have the beginnings for this process, but what's before us is much more aggressive than what the mayor put forward, and I think, frankly, what the charter allows at this point. So, go forward.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to provide you an overview of what's being considered
Please,
as it relates?
please.
Of course. Thank you. So CRC 1, as it relates to Public Works, it would empower the Director of Public Works to manage the day-to-day operations of the Department of Public Works and all of its bureaus, support the functions of citywide capital improvement planning, excludes the Director of Public Works from the transfer of power section in Section 514 of the Charter. CRC number 2, as it relates to Public Works, establishes a capital improvement program with the Department of Public Works being the lead agency. Capital improvement program plan shall span a minimum of 5 fiscal years and shall have identified and dedicated funding sources. For CRC number 3, related to Public Works, this would dedicate a minimum of 2% of the city's budget to the Department of Public Works. And then for CRC number 13 on this list of discussions, it's a discussion about the CAO to become the CFO. Would you like to discuss that at this point in time?
Might as well.
Okay. So CRC 13 redesignates the CAO as the Chief Financial Officer with a 10-year term, defines roles in the development and adoption of a capital improvement program, preparation of a midterm biannual budget report, and a multi-year financial plan. And then there are 2 items on the agenda today that are also related to these to this discussion, be item number 6 and item number 7. Item number 6 concerns Motion Raman Blumenfield, which discusses a charter amendment to grant the Department of Public Works the powers and duties to construct, operate, and maintain facilities that are not a dedicated public right-of-way. And item number 7 is a motion McCosker Blumenfield relative to a charter amendment to remove certain language regarding the devotion of time to the duties of the Board of Public Works.
All right, thank you. Also note that we have our CAO with us that I'll invite to the table for this discussion as well. You know, I'll ask the commission, and I'll just lead with this before you give your overview. So this issue raises a lot of other issues, and I'm not sure the best order to discuss them in. So there's the authorization to provide, to require a 5-year SIP, right? So that's, I think there's agreement on that, I think. But that necessitates at least some reorganization of our current departments that take care of infrastructure, mainly the Bureau of Public Works, but also Rec and Parks, Transportation, and other departments. And it requires direction and financial management, which raises the question of the CFO, which, again, the CFO has been raised, the idea of a CFO has been raised in other contexts. We just happen to be discussing it in this context today. So I just want to give you that basic overview as my understanding of what's in front of us based on the recommendations you forwarded to this committee.
Yes, thank you, Council President. The commission definitely heard early on from the beginning of their process about CIP and about changes to how we build and how we fix potholes and how we fix sidewalks across the board. There was one of the first presentations we had when the commission was finally formed was from the mayor, who spoke about needed changes citywide. You alluded and spoke about the CIP that she has proposed within the last couple of weeks. The commission heard all of that, and they definitely heard from a lot of interested stakeholders, a lot of community groups, a lot of think tanks as well, and best practices from different cities across the country. And they also wanted to balance with the historic nature of the city and the way the Department of Public Works has been for a very long time. There was definitely discussion about changing that historic nature, but there was the discussion really returned to focusing on finding a balance of retaining that structure, retaining the importance of what the board brings, while also adding a more day-to-day operational director of public works. There is a director of public works already in the charter that doesn't need to be created. The difference here is that that authority has been transferred. Much like already in the charter, there are department heads where transferability is allowed. There are also department heads where transferability is not allowed. Director of Public Works transferability is allowed and has been done so for the last couple decades. The commission saw now when they wanted to do a CIP. Now, a CIP would include departments not under the Department of Public Works, not under the purview of the Board of Public Works. So that's including parks and others. So by giving the power, removing the transferability of the Public Works director and putting that director in charge of the CIP and gathering, being when we say in charge, really being the steering force, the captain of that ship to make sure the process runs. Putting that person in charge so we can finally say that there is someone in charge of that pothole, that broken tree, that broken swing, that street light. One person in charge, of the 5-year plan of not only creating something but maintaining something over a long-term process. To Council Member Rahman's point, her project could have been in a CIP that was long-term planned, and there could have been better long-term planning for those projects that are in the pipeline with a director of public works who is on top of various bureaus, because as we know, it might not involve someone, a department that's necessarily under the Department of Public Works that touches that project, but a CIP would touch all capital projects within the city. So that was the driving force of the commission, to modernize, but also retain a lot of the historic functionality that we have in the city, but to find opportunities to improve and to make sure that there was someone in charge of the CIP and some of the day-to-day processes. Max.
And I'll just elaborate. So the commission looked at other cities and how they put together their CIPs. And so typically what happens is you have departments submit projects to a lead agency that then compiles those into a list of projects. Those then go to a financial authority who reviews that list for financial feasibilities and creates a funding plan, so puts numbers to all those projects. Then you have an executive coordinator who basically prioritizes the list, and they often work in tandem with an advisory committee composed of departments with purview over planning and infrastructure. So they essentially create that CIP. It goes to the mayor that approves it and puts it in the budget, and then council that approves it with the budget. So one of the things that the commission tried to do is not just make language to put the CIP into the charter, but sort of designate who these different entities would be. So typically for the lead agency, that entity that compiles the list, you want a department that manages infrastructure and knows basically the state of the infrastructure and its condition. And so in many cities, that is the director of public works. LA, as you know, has a complicated structure. So, part of the reason why we created that director of public works was to play that role of lead agency. And then review financial feasibility. We have that entity in the CAO. It would be changed to chief financial officer, but the CAO would do that. Then, the executive coordinator, that would also be that director of public works. But their real role would be, and this, all needs to be spelled out in an ordinance, but to be basically to, put together a steering committee made up of various departments to then take that list and prioritize it. And then would go to the mayor. So that's sort of how these, other city roles that the commission suggested sort of fit into that CIP. And I will say, for the CIP, the charter language, it's really the bare bones. It sort of spells out that process and who those different entities should be and sort of the timeline and what projects. But most cities don't have a CIP in their charter. It's done by ordinance. And so we gave sort of a bare bones, or the commission gave a bare bones, section for the capital improvement plan that's then meant to be further elaborated on as an ordinance. And the appendix of the report has sort of sample ordinances.
So mainly what you all put forward just requires the city to make a CIP, a 5-year CIP, and then leaves it up to the decision makers to form the appropriate organization around that or implementation of it.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say that director of public works sort of is an important role that, the city lacks that other cities have, whether it's like a director of public works or a chief administrative officer, but it's essentially a person that that has sort of that 1,000-foot view of all the infrastructure projects in the city. And key to that is also, their maintenance and what status they're in, to sort of put together that list. And so that's sort of where that director role that's being proposed is sort of an integral part of that CIP.
But is your recommendation mandating the creation of the director role?
Yes, so as Justin mentioned, the director role, it already is in the charter, but it had its authority transferred by council in 2005. So the commission is basically, going back to 514B, protecting it from transfer. But one of the issues of why that role was transferred is because when it was established, it didn't really have a clear line of authority between the Board of Public Works and then the various GMs of the bureaus. And so the commission is suggesting, creating that director role, but then carving it out with more authority over the SIP, but also really over the day-to-day operations of the departments, and then keeping the board on to sort of do the high-level policy.
Got it. All right. So it works out that we already have a chief administrative officer, and he's here. So I want to ask him to opine first, and then we have members of the Board of Public Works here as well. So, Mr. Zabel.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. President. So in terms of just the overall, the CIP, or look, a couple of points. As it relates to the recommendations, my office is generally supportive. I do think there is a challenge that would need to be addressed, and that is any long-term, any CIP, any long-term plan needs to include, obviously it needs to include transportation, and it also needs to include ITA, technology and infrastructure. And so that's the one area where I think is a weakness that would need to be addressed. If the coordinating authority for our CIP is the Director of Public Works that only oversees the 5 bureaus, it kind of, you have transportation and ITA that are kind of out of that loop. So we would need to figure out how to bring those in as part of the process. In our we did provide additional detail as to what a multi-year capital plan would look like and could include. We included that in our multi-year budgeting report, which suggests that it would have to include not only the estimated overall cost, but the cost of operations and maintenance, all of the project timelines, all of the revenues associated with each project, the identified funding sources, et cetera. So the way that we would see it is that if we adopted the multi-year, we see this as a package. A multi-year budgeting would require a multi-year infrastructure plan, a multi-year strategic plan, and a financial plan. The strategic plan would be what do we want to do? The capital plan would be what are the things that we need to do to achieve those goals, and then the financial plan and the multi-year budget is funding those priorities, which would already be established. Right now, we're kind of forced into, as members, as the budget chair is well aware, into a policy process and a budget process at the same time. And that's literally, it's just impossible to do in the 3-week window that the committee has to deal with that. So this would institute much more certainty. But I do think the components of the changes to my office, they do include a role in developing the plan and developing the financial plan for the multi-year infrastructure plan. That will be, we certainly support that. That would be essential.
And you think that would be a more efficient, I think you said this, but I just want to make sure, you think that would be a more efficient process than the process that you lead now?
Well, the process that my office leads now, it is, the CTIEP is a financing mechanism for projects that have been approved. So we get the projects, and so it is a bit of a misnomer that the CAO is in charge of the infrastructure program. That's not exactly true. It is very disparate. You have departments that are moving projects. Sometimes those projects are part of programs. Those projects are approved through the various authorities that would, council committees, commissions, et cetera. And then as those projects come forward, we do the analysis and say, well, this project needs this much money in this year, and here are the revenue sources that would be eligible to fund that project. That's the piece that we do now. The what of that plan, the what of what we are financing, is currently divorced from a long-term plan with goals, objectives, standards, metrics, all of that. So I wouldn't, the financing portion of it, that needs to be part of the budget process. Our office is best suited to determine, okay, if there's this project that's going to cost $50 million over 5 years, what are the sources of funds that can best fund that? I wouldn't change that, but we certainly need more institutionalized long-term planning.
Got it, thank you. And then we'll hear from our commissioners who submitted a letter on this, and then we'll begin discussion by the committee.
So good afternoon, Council President and Council members. My name is Steve Kang. I'm the President of the Board of Public Works, joined at the table by my fellow Commissioner Vice President Jenny Chavez, along with some of our Bureau directors in the audience as well. So as you noted earlier, we're a full-time 5-member body that meets 3 times a week in open public session, overseeing 5 of our core infrastructure bureaus, along with board offices such as the Office of Community Beautification. So as outlined in our letter, we submitted 4 recommendations. The first is we are very much supportive of empowering the Director of Public Works. And the Commission, we've had many discussions, as staff mentioned earlier, from the beginning and throughout the process, that we have been lacking a director that is really focused on our CIP and long-term capital infrastructure programming. So we are very much in supportive of that to empower the director to lead citywide capital infrastructure improvement program. And as our CAO outlined, not just within the Department of Public Works, but outside the Department of Public Works, including DOT and many of our other departments throughout our city. However, one note of concern is that Section 582 language does go beyond sort of the focus on CIP, but rather it's potentially an executive style management director. And as all of you heard earlier, the importance of CIP and how much work that entails that process, we felt that the director of public works should focus on a citywide CIP process, which in itself should be more than sufficient in sort of outlining the future investments that our city would need. And then I would want to turn over to my colleague, Commissioner Chavez, for recommendation number 2.
Jenny Chavez, Board of Public Works. On recommendation 2, which is the recommendation to allocate 2% of the city budget to infrastructure, while the board supports dedicated infrastructure funding, the board needs clarity before it can support this specific mechanism. I think that having dedicated funding that goes toward to infrastructure is a sound policy goal, and we have long advocated for multi-year capital investment planning and a dedicated revenue stream that supports that. However, this proposed fund raises 3 specific issues that need to be resolved before the charter language can be finalized. The first is special fund commingling. You know, we receive infrastructure funding through dozens of different special funds, Prop K, Measure W, state and federal grants, each with its own legal, accounting, and reporting requirements. Consolidating these into a single fund may violate grant agreements, SB1 requirements, and other legal obligations. So we really feel this needs some legal determination before adopting. Also, it needs some clarity. What qualifies as infrastructure funding? For the purposes of this section, the scope directly affects which projects and departments fall under this mechanism, and it requires clarity. And then the section D purpose language, the current language states that the fund is for, quote, for the financial support of the Department of Public Works. We think this is too broad and could be read to fund administrative overhead rather than infrastructure investment, and we recommend that the committee require more specific purpose language before finalizing this section. So we recommend that you direct the CAO and city attorney to provide legal and fiscal analysis before addressing these 3 issues.
And then for quickly on recommendation 3, in terms of the transfer protection. So although we're neutral on this, I think there is value because as you heard back in 2005, the director's powers were transferred by ordinance. So when we were to codify this language, that would protect the transfer protections. And then related to recommendation number 4 is sort of the reporting relationship. We wanted to ensure that the Board of Public Works reports directly to you and the mayor instead of reporting to the Director of Public Works. So with that, I'm happy to answer additional questions.
All right, members' discussion on Mr. Dundas.
Mike Dundas, City Attorney's Office. Just one quick on that last point from the Commission President. As proposed by the Commission and in the draft language that was presented to you, it doesn't change the organizational structure currently. The board is still the manager of the department under the charter. There are a lot more powers given to the Director of Infrastructure, but they all are subject to the direction of the board. What it does, and maybe to sort of give an analogy, is it creates it more like the current structure of the police department, which is there's the board that manages the department, but absent any specific instruction, the chief of police is there to manage that on a day-to-day without, the same thing would be done here, which is the director of infrastructure would be able to manage the department as he or she see fits. But then the board would always still be the direct head of the department, unless that's the policy change, unless the,
Got it, but that's your understanding of what's before us. All right, members on this, Councilmember Yaroslavsky? Nothing.
Yeah, without getting into too much detail, just say I'm generally supportive of having one person sort of helming this and figuring out how to get these 5 bureaus coordinated and working towards a CIP. I'll stop there, basically, because there's a lot more detail, but I don't think we need to get into it now. Thank you.
Got it. Shona Martinez, Councilmember Rahman.
Yes, I mean, I had a couple of questions here. If we move forward with a CIP, it says that the Director of Public Works would be responsible for the CIP. What if one part of the reforms move forward, is there anyone else who would be leading that in your envisioning?
So yeah, I mean, that's really where that overview, of how SIP is usually compiled in other cities comes in. So, I mean, currently that role, really is the CAO. So we gave the commission options of who could be that, lead agency to both compile the projects and then act as that executive coordinator function. And really what that means is they would convene sort of an advisory committee to put together that list. And that's something this is all a process that can be established by ordinance, but for example, in San Francisco and San Diego, that advisory committee, they're composed of, equivalent of ITA or Department of Transportation, city planning, all the departments that touch infrastructure or long-term planning for the city. But I think if you decided not to, reestablish that Director of Public Works, it would be important to, designate an entity to, serve that role of both compiling the list and prioritizing the list. Entity or person.
Council member, I think just for my input, if the framework of the multi-year budget is adopted and there isn't another entity charged with developing and proposing to the council the CIP, I think it would fall to the mayor to coordinate and then propose to the council the multi-year capital program.
Got it. And then I had another question about the proposals that were discussed at the Charter Commission. I know, actually, Martin had presented another proposal which was discussed, which was a little bit more expansive in its envisioning of what the changes were. I wondered whether you might talk a little bit about why,
I'm looking for Martin's.
All right.
So
Caleb, yeah.
basically, she'd like us to go over his motion.
Not go over it, but so how many, are there other cities that have this kind of commission structure in place?
No. For Public Works?
Yeah.
No, this is it's a unique structure.
Unique to Los Angeles.
And
again, if we were trying to step back and say, we're trying to bring about greater coordination between these different bureaus that make up the Public Works, and to ensure that projects are moving forward more quickly and they have a plan, does this proposal that you put forward address that broader issue of better functioning, better coordination?
Yes, so what the commission was responding to is a lot of, presentations we had, talking about that lack of coordination between the various infrastructure departments in the city, and that, involves capital planning down to things like, departments having different software to do things. So the Director of Public Works was envisioned as sort of coordinating across the bureaus. And there were, proposals, for example, to eliminate the bureaus. And so you wouldn't have GMs of the bureaus, and the director would be the GM of the Department of Public Works. The commission decided not to do that. And there was other proposals, so
sorry. So in this case, you'd still have an appointed Director of Public Works, and then you'd have additional bureau heads that would be appointed through a separate process, not appointed by the Director of Public Works, right?
yes.
And so how would accountability work here? If the Director of Public Works is responsible for moving forward a capital improvement process for the city, if the bureaus of the entities that are supposed to be implementing that don't report to the director, how does it actually help to move forward these projects in any significantly improved way?
So there were responsibilities that were transferred from the board to that director, but that would be.
Like what? Like what would actually help address this issue of interdepartmental coordination and accountability that feels to me like the core of what this reform was trying to do?
Council member, if I may, Raymond Mesa was the chair of the Charter Reform Commission. This is a very contentious subject within the commission's deliberations, and what you see here is a compromise, and I just want to be very clear of that. There are voices on the commission that felt that there should be strong, that the Director of Public Works, which already exists, that the transfer power be eliminated so that it actually functions, because it actually only functioned for a few years before the 99 charter established the Director of Public Works, and by 2005, only 6 years later, the authority was transferred because of what you're describing, because the Director of Public Works tried to assert the authority over the bureau heads to coordinate across the department, and the bureau heads didn't like it.
So, but then this seems like you're putting that into place again. I don't know.
What we're saying is reassert the Director of Public Works, and council will have to have the political will, while we're actually saying eliminate the opportunity for council to transfer the authority so that the Director of Public Works could establish itself, one, to coordinate the CIP, but then two, as was a concern that was addressed by the commission, to oversee the day-to-day operations of the bureau, to address what some perceive as the lack of coordination that can sometimes happen between the bureaus. That's why the commission recommended that the director be in charge of the day-to-day operations of all the bureaus, and there is disagreement on that from the board. But we did keep the board intact for political considerations.
I'll see if I can help on this. When you want to do something on a street as a council member or a neighborhood council or as a set of businesses, it's like 6 departments. 6.
Yeah.
And no one's in charge. Some of them your council member can help with, some of them your mayor can help with, some of them one of the commissioners, which you have to figure out which of the 5 commissioners is the person that works on that particular issue. So that's just to get them all to the table. Then to get them to work in an organized way, or a way that makes any kind of sense that can be articulated, there's literally no one person that can tell you that. You basically have to do a research project to figure out how different departments arrived at the decision to carry out the work or not carry out the work the way that they are. And I think what there's a concern to get at is, how is there some centrality to make sense of that work while maintaining the benefits of having a commission, because I do think it's beneficial the same way a police commission is beneficial. But if I want to know what the police department is doing, I can ask the chief. And the chief has to answer.
The other option that was alluded to was proposed by Commissioner Schladiger, which at the time, and thank you for poaching him, was for the creation of a city coordination officer, which would be a high-level mayoral appointee confirmed by council that would have the executive function across the entire city. Where the commission landed on in the recommendation was the Director of Public Works, and by ordinance, the council giving them the authority to coordinate across departments even outside of the Department of Public Works. But what the other option that was proposed was the establishment of a citywide coordination officer, so that it was very clear that it was citywide. And I think, Councilmember Rahman, that's what you were also alluding to.
You might as well. It's your proposal. You actually understand I'm asking Martin to go to the table, former commissioner.
Come on down, Martin.
He's resisting it mightily.
Here we go.
I'm dead serious. We gotta figure this out.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to belabor the point, colleagues, if this is not something that you have concerns about with the proposal that's in front of us. But I am a little bit afraid that what we have before us will not actually address the dysfunction, fragmentation of responsibilities that has led to the very real challenges on our streets and sidewalks. And like, what are we doing here if we're not going to solve for that? If we're going to send something to the ballot, it should be a solution to that.
And the other thing I would say before I ask Martin to speak, the impact of this on voters is someone's hiding the ball, right? That's the natural conclusion you come to. Even though I actually have come to believe it is legitimately confusing, it is not illegitimately confusing. But to the average Angelino, it just looks like, oh, they have all these people in all these positions so that no one is actually responsible for the problem. Councilmember.
If we are going to create a head of Public Works, which I think makes a lot of sense, that person should be able to figure out how to organize their own department. I think a good model, or one model that we could look at, is just down the street. You have County Public Works, where you have Mark Pastrella in charge of Public Works, and they do all of the things that our Public Works bureaus do, and they run waterworks, and they do power, they do all sorts of things, and he is in charge of that department. And having spent 8 years there, I think it works pretty well. So I don't know what we do with this. This feels like a very big thing that we need to solve for, but I think it's something that we need to figure out and spend some time working on, because so often our bureaus are at cross purposes, and that's very frustrating for all of us.
Yeah, and DOT is, by the way, not even part of this. Yeah. And DOT is like the biggest, not the biggest, but it is another X factor in part of, in how we move stuff forward. And so again,
most of our infrastructure is streets.
And but at the county, it is part of Public Works.
Right. So colleagues, I guess I would just say, like, we are here to solve a problem, not to compromise, or not to advance a compromise that doesn't get at the root of the problem. To me.
And I just want to say, the membership in the for the CIP process, the steering committee, would include all departments and bureaus. So it would include everyone.
That's to make a plan. We're talking about something else, which is implementation. Right.
But you have to have a plan before you even think about implementing. And we haven't had a plan. We've had lists.
But we have projects that are on. We know that we're doing projects, right?
Yeah.
So yes, there may not be a coordinated plan where we're addressing all of the issues, but we do have projects that we know we need to do. And we know the problems that result from them. And again, I don't want to belabor this point because I know we're getting up on time, but advancing a compromise to the ballot that doesn't solve the problems that we're here to solve feels...
half step. Councilmember Soto Martinez, and then we'll hear from Martin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I agree with many of the things that have been said from my colleagues. And someone just brought it up about DOT not being, like, that's a huge piece of it. Like, what was the consideration about bringing other folks under this sort of centralized, plan? Anybody?
So that's one of the, the things that have sort of been lingering out there for decades. It was decided, we had a presentation, and it is best practice in most large cities that the DOT actually is separate from the Department of Public Works. And that's because, what our DOT does is traffic enforcement, but also, the planning of the streets and what's on it. And so in many cities, it's found to be best practice to have that planning aspect be separate, so it's not buried, and you sort of have an entity in charge of like mobility. So that's why they were not included in this. But you know, with the SIP, you know, that's another way to encourage that coordination. The other issue is, for example, you know, one of the things that was on the table was combining DOT and Bureau of Street Services. Both of those departments are the same size now. So it would just be a huge, you know, logistical hurdle, not to mention, you know, creating like a massive department.
Right. But when I think about DOT as a part of this sort of larger plan, I'm thinking about Measure HLA. We have to, because the voters mandated this, we have to implement everything in the Mobility Plan 2035. That DOT is a huge part of that. Unless HLA changes, like you're sort of leaving out a big department. It's going to play a huge role in many of these things. So, was that taken into account? Was that considered?
Yeah, and I mean, so I think the way to address some of that, or what the commission found the way to address that, would be through that CIP process. So I mean, you know, now, I mean, one of the issues with DOT, right, is that they will plan a project on a street, but they're not able to, you know, build the curb ramp or, you know, do the infrastructure or the repaving, and they have to go to Bureau of Street Services, and there's coordination, and they have different priorities. So through the SIP, you would have, you know, we're going to do a project on Manchester Boulevard. You know, it's put in that 5-year plan, and you have, you know, street lighting, street services, Bureau of Engineering, all on board and doing it all at once, as opposed to, you know, DOT planning their project now and then having to go ask those departments to sort of do the work on the back end. But yeah, I mean, it sort of gets at one of the things we were talking about before, but I think, you know, one of the things that the commission was reacting to is just the, you know, just massive thing it would entail to basically combine these huge departments together and making sort of monstrous departments. And if you do that, would the priorities of each really get buried? So transportation planning and street safety, for example, would now be buried, you know, deep within Public Works and not given, you know, the status it has now as being its own department.
You know, I would if I think a report back would be good about just how Measure HLA, like DOT, I know has a lot of different pieces, but Measure HLA is such a big part right now that I think it's at least I would like to explore how that would look like. And then I know we're running up in time, but the other thing that I don't understand quite well is why BCA? Like I get why you want to include some of these departments that are actually out there doing stuff, but BCA doesn't seem to be. I've never heard anybody complain, oh, BCA is not coordinating with these other departments. Like, I've never heard that. So why not BCA just report directly to the board or whoever instead of it being under this director?
Yeah.
Or why include BCA, I guess?
Well, that's, you know, what the commission was going off of is sort of the director of Public Works that was already in the charter from 1999. And, you know, bringing it back and empowering it. They didn't really have a discussion about, you know, bifurcating the bureaus or BCA in that way.
Okay, so I would want to look into that too, because I get like Bureau of Engineering, Street Services, DOT, like all that makes sense. BCA, I don't think makes sense to me. So I would also want to report back of like, let's look at BCA. Like, does it have to be reporting to the director? Should it be created, or just directly to the Board of Public Works? I would like to look at that.
Thank you. All right, we'll make a note of that. CLA, I want to give former Commissioner Schlager an opportunity to present his proposal, because it sounds like what we're hearing is that it was a political decision to bring this forward because what needed to be done couldn't be done in the amount of time you had, is what I'll say. And if that's the case, that's fine, but it's got, you know, we got to make it make sense if we're going to take up the voters' time to look at this issue. They got to be looking at something that actually fixes it. So, Commissioner.
Martin Schlager. I served on the Charter Reform Commission until late January when I resigned in order to be able to join you here as council staff. You'll forgive me, this was not anticipated nor advocated for, but I am interested in what exactly you'd like to hear from me.
Well, your plan was referenced by both a member of the council and a member of the commission, and I just thought you could give an overview. Your plan as it relates to the questions that you've heard raised by all of us.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rahman
I can ask the question, which is, the proposal that you made was more sweeping than what came out of the commission to us. And the proposal that you made seems to address more accurately or more head-on some of the challenges that a lot of us have experienced in trying to move projects forward here in the city of LA. And so I guess for me, it would be important to understand why you felt like your proposal was important and whether you think the proposal in front of us meets those same goals.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. And I want to acknowledge that the commission did do an incredible amount of work on this, and I don't pretend to have reflected all of the considerations that they may have had. The proposal I made was intended primarily, well, it had several parts, and I will be as concise as I can. I was trying to help navigate this question about the value of the board versus the value and the division of responsibility between the board and an empowered director. I do think it makes sense to have an empowered director, and the thought was to be able to delineate those responsibilities between the board and the director so they both could exist and be effective in collaborating with one another. Another component of this was really getting at the questions of driving collaboration over the long term, where you have an empowered director of public works, but not all of your related agencies are associated under public works. And rather than the commission on its short timeline with all of the complications that the members have raised today and more, the thought was to make it simpler in the charter to be able to make those changes later. And I think you hear that theme throughout our meetings of the past couple weeks, and you'll continue to hear them. Where is it useful to remove the restrictions of the charter so that on an executive basis we can make changes of the structure later? And so part of my recommendation was not to include the director in the protection against the transfer of powers as is recommended here, and in fact to then remove the protections of the individual bureaus that are currently in the charter so that executive authority could reshape those later. That's not an immediate change to what the bureaus are today. Those would still remain with their current responsibilities. The thinking was merely that it shouldn't be a question of whether you include DOT under Public Works or whether you take Streets LA and put them under DOT. In fact, you may need to break apart the bureaus in several ways and reassemble them. And to be able to do that in association with an exploration of DOT's responsibilities. So it was an acknowledgement that that is not a short-term fix that we can do in the charter, but to try to use the charter as a way of enabling that fix later. And the third component, which you spoke to, Councilwoman Rahman, was beyond what has been presented here in terms of responsibilities for who is the financial officer giving financial information upon which an infrastructure plan is developed, and who's responsible for developing the infrastructure plan, both of which the charter recommendations covered. There was a third component of who is overseeing, managing, reporting on implementation elements of a capital infrastructure plan. And so I had made a proposal of establishing a chief coordinating office of some kind, because that responsibility very often does not have a home. Sometimes it has a home in the Board of Public Works, and there's capable individuals who are able to drive that cross-departmental, citywide coordination, but oftentimes it does end up leaving out elements of GSD and Rec and Parks and DOT in that hierarchy. So is there a coordinating body that is citywide that can help drive some of those components where true citywide cross-departmental coordination is necessary? And I've seen that in my experience in a need on infrastructure, on homelessness, where we're trying to create a Bureau of Homelessness, which is underneath Housing Department, but also needs to drive things that are cross-departmental. And the Environmental Office, which is currently under the Sanitation Department, but needs to drive climate and other priorities well beyond sanitation or even the Board of Public Works. And Economic Development, which has a home, but again, could benefit from a stronger platform to drive cross-departmental coordination. The proposal was merely presented and not fleshed out, so I want to acknowledge there may be, many challenges to its function. But the thought was, in driving the implementation of an infrastructure plan, a coordinating body that is able to take certain coordination needs beyond simply the Board of Public Works is valuable. And I would just want to acknowledge that in developing what the commission came up with, we had the benefit that there was a mayoral ED9 that had begun to put forth some plans for a citywide capital infrastructure plan. With that released now today, I think there's the ability to continue to learn from that plan and its implementation, and to identify the benefits and also the continued need for evolution for the structural and process-wise needs of having a really effective capital infrastructure plan. I believe the charter recommendations broadly that call for this are valuable. I think there needs to be continued space for further structural adjustments, including in order to learn from what we're going to learn from doing this for the first time via the capital infrastructure plan that the mayor's put forward. And that's how I would both describe my proposal and also put it in the context of where we are today versus where we were in December when I presented it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Members? All right, so it sounds like on this particular item, we're at 410, I'll note that, there's still a little bit more discussion because we actually didn't get into discussion around the CFO part of it. So I want to continue this to our next meeting, but it sounds like in summation, I'll ask the CLA's office to come forward to give me their summation. We have at least one report back that we requested by Mr. Soto Martinez. Oh, there's Mr. Wickham. He's got it?
Steve's got it.
Hi, Steve with the CLA's office. We actually captured 2 report backs from Mr. Soto Martinez. One
Okay.
is a report on how the coordination related to Measure HLA would be working under this new director of Public Works. And the second one is a report on kind of keeping BCA separate compared to the rest of the bureaus and having them report directly to the board.
And also, can you give us a report back on what a scope of work might look like for a consultant that could study and report back on models for infrastructure work for cities or entities of similar size? So there was reference made to the county by Councilmember Yaroslavsky, who has a, very different model than we do, but all of the same requirements that we do. And so this is a place where I think outside expertise might be helpful. Mr. Soto Martinez.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, when I refer Measure HLA and how this would fit, I'm really want to look at the pieces of DOT that interact with other pieces like the BOE and street services, things like that. I understand DOT does a lot of things, including traffic enforcement, but really those pieces of DOT that could interact with parts of the Board of Public Works.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge, I said it as an offhanded comment, but I just want to acknowledge, like, talking about infrastructure without DOT at the center of it seems really off, since most of our infrastructure, or the biggest category of infrastructure we have, is actually streets. Like, we have more streets than we have parks and sidewalks and all the rest. Mr. Wickham.
Yeah, I'm sorry to raise this here, but we have...
At this time, go ahead.
At this time, at this hour, we have an extraordinary infrastructure project currently underway right in downtown, being the convention center. And I think that project touches virtually every city department except for the zoo in El Pueblo, right? And so it touches on our proprietaries, it touches on our departments that have regulatory obligations and components, and it touches on departments that have administrative roles. And so that is several other layers of complication that I don't know that we've really touched on in this conversation yet. And I think your point about looking at models and dealing with some of these issues is very productive and helpful in the conversation.
Good. All right. Anything else on this, members?
Yes.
Yes, the relation of BCA to these bureaus. Oh, yes, we got that in the last, thank you, we got that in the last one. All right, so I think that'll wrap us up for today. Madam Clerk, can you give us the good of the order at this moment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're going to continue item number 1, and then we have another 6 items on the agenda. Are you going to continue?
We'll continue those items.
To a date to be determined.
Yes.
And item number 1 is being continued to May 21.
That's right. All right, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.